Welcome to the February 10th Planning Board Workshop. For starters, Noreen, can you start us out with a roll call? Here. Here?
Here.
Here.
Okay, so
Oh, right, sorry. Somebody had to yell at me eventually. Sorry.
so with that, we have a quorum, and we're going to begin, and Bonnie will be joining us. So for starters, let's just point out the fire exits. There's the main door to the building that we all came in through. There's another door through the double doors back here, and then two exits in the rear through double doors in the out onto the patio. If I can ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. Okay, our first project for tonight is DG Management.
Last time I touched this, it broke, but there we go. Good.
As if like magic.
Just like that. Thank you, George.
All right, John, if you'd like to bring us up to date.
Sure. We were last before you last month. My partner was here, where the board adopted a negative declaration for the project. And at that point, we didn't proceed any further because we wanted to get a little further along with the ZBA. We did go to last month's ZBA. I'll say we worked through some issues. And it became apparent that after reviewing the plan, it looked like we could avoid some variances if we made an adjustment to the plan, specifically in regards to the open space lot and the easement areas. And in looking at that, myself and Jay Myro, the applicant's counsel, took a look at this and said, what if we made all of the easements and open space areas as its own lot? So as you may recall, the subdivision, Lot 1 was to own all these areas. So if we made Lot 1 a small clustered lot like the rest of them and created what we call an open space lot, it would be Lot 10, and it would just be the open space lots. In looking at that, it would appear that we wouldn't need area variances for the setback to open space areas. So the project needs two variances, if you recall. One is for 50% of the gross lot area being open space. The other one was a setback distance from rear yards, or I should just say yards, to the open space areas.
Not necessarily a yard, it was just simply the
buffer.
distance from the building
Correct.
to the open space,
Yeah,
which is 75 feet
mentioned
required.
it as yards, and it was a 75-foot buffer, okay?
Now, that was the issue in the yards kind of along the easement? Was that like lot 3, 4, 5?
Actually, it's the opposite. It was any lot that abutted open space. So really, it was lots 6, 7, and 8.
Right, okay.
And 1, yes. And what the code reads is that I think the intent is if the lot contains open space, that instead of taking open space right up to either the rear setback or some distance that's 10 feet away from the building, it's meant to provide a buffer so that you still have a usable rear yard or side yard or something to that effect where you wouldn't encroach into the open space. It makes sense. In this arrangement, though, none of the lots will contain open space. They won't own it. It'll be on its own parcel. So in reading the code, if open space is not contained on the lot, then it would appear that that setback or that buffer isn't required. So lot 10, what we're calling lot 10 now, would encompass all of that, and it would be its own parcel. And it's proposed that that parcel would either be owned by the town, if the town was so inclined to accept it, or through another means, particularly an HOA, if that was available. So with that being said, the applicant has approached some members of the town board. There were some discussions about whether or not the town would be interested in taking this parcel. And so far, several members have expressed a positive feedback on that potentially they would have no objection to taking the open space parcels as we proceeded down. So the map that I had emailed over today was being circulated between Sean, Ashley, myself, and Jay Monroe, going over this to see if indeed everybody was on the same page with what we're going to be proposing. And what that does internally is changes our ZBA application a little bit not to require those variances. So we would be down to just the single variance for the open space. And that's really what we've been working on the last couple of days.
So nothing really changes with the lot layout, with all the open space that was being proposed is still the open space that's being shown on this new, I don't know if the rest of the board had a chance to take a peek at this, but it's virtually identical with the exception of that rather than Lot 1 encompassing all of the open space, Lot 1 is a regular cluster type lot like the rest of the lots, and everything else that would be green space becomes its own lot. That's
Correct.
Exactly right.
So if you're familiar with the plan, nothing has really changed with the
Nothing-
dimensions of anything.
No.
It's really just new lot line.
Correct. We struck 2 lot lines on lot number 1. We put a lot line across the rear and then down the side with the open space.
So what it sounds like to me is when it comes to the ZBA and always them being with the eye to doing the least possible variance necessary, if you can avoid doing one of the variances altogether, that helps move the process forward.
Yes.
But what variances remain? The issue of the 50%.
Correct. That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay. Have you gotten any feedback from them at this point, or that's to come at the next session?
We've been to the ZBA probably 3 times now. We've stated our case. The board has stated theirs. I haven't gotten a direction one way or the other. We are scheduled for a public hearing at the end of this month, and I guess we'll see how that goes.
All right. Anything else that you need to share with us before we?
No, that was it. I mean, that's really the only difference.
Okay. Next, I'd like to hear from our consultants, particularly to this issue, of course.
Sure.
And anything else that we've reviewed since the last time this project was in front of us.
So to speak to the latter part of that, there wasn't anything else that was submitted for this month. But speaking to this issue specifically, I think one of the key points of this whole discussion is that the way the code reads is the buffer can't be privately held. So the lot would have to be donated to a public entity or publicly held. I think I saw Ashley was communicating with Jay Jay Monroe that the intent of having the HOA own it, I'm not sure if that meets that definition of private or meets the definition of public. So I think that has to be vetted out. But, I did speak to the supervisor yesterday specifically about this issue. He didn't state any objection to the town accepting dedication, but he was going to review it with the town board.
Well, and my question would be, would public be read as held by a government entity, or could a private nonprofit that is, something like, open space?
Open
Yeah,
space
the
into-
land trust
right.
be able to do that.
Maybe that's a question for Ashley.
Yeah. All right. Ashley, can you tell us about what you've reviewed with this new proposal and any information you could share with us about that?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So the provision in the code regarding this setback issue, it says the required open space land may not include private yards located within 75 feet of a principal building. So the question really becomes whether it would be a private yard still if it's held by some type of private entity versus a public entity. So we did speak with the applicant's attorney just a little bit by email, and I indicated that it would have to be held publicly, so by the town or some other public entity. I don't think it necessarily has to be a government per se, but some type of public benefit corporation or some type of public corporation. But that, I think that issue could be vetted out depending on which route the applicant's going to take. So if they want to, say it's going to be public and then pursue whatever they think is public, if it becomes an issue and they have to go back for another variance, that would be, on them.
Correct. Right now, the applicant, we are pursuing to dedicate this or donate this to the town. That would be the path at this point.
So I assume what you need from us at this point is a little bit of conversation around whether this would be an acceptable solution to the planning board as well.
Correct. And I would also ask is if it is, that the planning board possibly craft some correspondence to the ZBA confirming that situation.
Okay, so again, I don't know if everyone on the board has had an opportunity to take a peek at what's being presented. Again, it's not really a different plan. It's different. It creates a separate lot that wasn't going to be created originally. We were going to have 9 lots, and now just, again, everything that was open space will be its own separate lot and separate ownership from each of the other 9 residential lots. So, do you want to speak to that, Jason, and what your thought is on that concept?
Yeah, so conceptually, I like this idea. I would prefer you guys to continue pursuing the town board route. Land trusts, they wheel and deal in real estate, and they have the ability to buy and sell, and I don't know if that would necessarily be permanently conserved. So I prefer if you dedicated it or donated it to the town. Question for Sean, because we're reducing the size of Lot 1 now, does that change anything with the stormwater systems?
No, I mean, really, it's just two imaginary lines that are being drawn.
Yeah.
So stormwater-wise, no, it wouldn't be affected.
And yeah, otherwise, no objection from me.
Pat, your thoughts?
Yeah, I can't see why we would have any objection to this. And I don't.
Lisa?
I don't have any objection.
Yeah, frankly, it actually makes more sense to me this way than it did that all the land was part of Lot 1. I always had I understand this is the way it works. We've seen plenty of other plans that are similar where the land is either all owned by one lot or split between a couple of lots, which then, of course, becomes land that, although it's not usable, it's still taxable to the lot owner. It's still ultimately the responsibility of that lot owner, and that seemed to be quite a bit to take on. So for me, this is actually a preferred solution. I didn't know this was actually an option. So I'm certainly in favor of this.
Excellent. Yeah, we kind of evolved here. At one point, I think all the lots owned a piece, and then it was, we didn't particularly care for that because now you have 9 different lot owners potentially encroaching. That's when we shifted it to Lot 1, and this becoming available now, I think this is the best solution.
So Ashley,
Just one comment,
Yeah, please.
quickly, because something you had said earlier triggered it. I do believe that now they've updated the bulk table. I think because of this change, it's no longer going to be Lot 1. I think Lot 1,
I
perhaps,
haven't,
or maybe another one now needs a reduced rear yard setback, which you have the authority to do under your cluster regulations, but I think that might have been added as well. Is that correct, John?
no, I did not update the bulk table yet until I kind of knew that this was the direction we were going, Ashley. But the rear yard, you are correct, the rear yard would be 25, which would match all the other lots' rear yard along the easement.
And in addition, the gross area for Lot 1 obviously goes down.
Gross area goes down, but the net does not
The
change.
net is the same,
Correct.
right?
Because we weren't adding in the open space of the easements to it anyway.
and I'm sorry, Ashley, just so I make sure that I understood properly. So you're saying that's within the planning board's authority, again, as part of the cluster, that we can say, yep, that works for us, and
Yeah, so they were already seeking reduced yards for some of the different lots, and now this is just gonna be an additional one seeking that same rear yard as the others.
Okay, so with that in mind, anyone on the board have a concern that Lot 1 would now be treated like some of the other lots and have that reduced setback?
No concern here. No objection. Is this an action item?
I don't think this is something we necessarily have to vote on. I mean, I think I feel like we've made that decision, at least to some degree, for the adjacent lots. And we're just saying, yep, we're comfortable with this lot being like the other lots. Do I have that correct, Ashley?
Yeah, you wouldn't be taking any action until it's, part of the actual resolution for the whole project.
Sure.
That's when you would set the reduced setbacks.
So any reason why it would be not appropriate for us to provide the ZBA with a correspondence that lays out that we're happy with this solution effectively?
I think if you want, I could write just a simple letter saying that the board reviewed this revised plan. It's your understanding that the applicant's going to pursue that open space lot being held by the town or in other public ownership, and that you're in favor of that. And it appears that would eliminate the need then for the 75-foot buffer variance.
Great, so if I follow process correctly, we should take a quick vote just to authorize you to take that action.
Certainly.
Okay, so Noreen, I'm going to make a motion that we authorize Ashley to provide the ZBA with a written correspondence in relation to our conversation here tonight, and that we find this solution to be an acceptable solution for the planning board. May I have a second?
I'll second.
I think.
I'll take it.
Jason Sorensky.
That's why we need little buzzers that light up with whoever's first.
Great.
Jeopardy.
Jason Sorensky.
Aye.
Jeff Manson.
Aye.
Pat Shea.
Aye.
Lisa McQuaid.
Aye.
I almost called Donnie.
Okay, so that passes. So with that, John, anything else we can take care of for you tonight?
One more
Please.
item. The applicant would like to request the board consider scheduling this for public hearing in March. And it ends up with our time frame that our public hearing with the ZBA is on the 22nd. We should probably, I'm hoping, open and close it that night, and they would render a decision at that point. If they didn't, we would still then have time to come back in March and then schedule the public hearing for April. Month. Worst case scenario, even if the ZBA doesn't act, this board could still open its hearing and just would keep it open until such time.
So the question I have for you, Ashley, is if we open up the public hearing, how long can we keep the public hearing open while we might be waiting for a decision from the ZBA?
You keep it open for 120 days.
Another option is, can the public hearing be scheduled subject to the closing of the ZBA's public hearing?
Probably could, because I think we have enough time to, we have enough time
It would just depend on
to notice.
the days that would,
Yeah.
the notice days and when the ZBA meeting is versus when you'd have to get those notices out for the.
Especially if it was at the second meeting in March.
That's when we've been using the public hearings, right, at the second meeting?
Right.
You probably have that. If it's the 22nd, you'd have enough.
What date would,
We'd be the 15th.
Yeah, March
right?
5th.
Yeah, because,
So the mailings would have to go out by the 5th,
okay, and the ZBA is the 22nd. of this month.
22nd, so that gives us like a week and a half, almost 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Maureen, on this one, if you could just make a note that the public hearing notice also has to go to the village of Monroe, because it's within 500 feet of the boundary.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think that'll pull up with the 300 footer anyway, but I'll make sure. I'll add it to Lipa's list, he'll be happy.
all right, so do any of the other board members have an opinion why it wouldn't be appropriate to set the public hearing conditioned on us receiving a decision from the ZBA for our March 15th meeting?
If I could, not a decision, if, as long as ZBA closes the hearing, because it could, it could be another 30 days where they actually write the decision, you know. And again, I don't think it hurts us either way, because we could always just postpone. We would do the mailings and we would just simply postpone for March. No, 4 months.
Right. Well, I mean, I think if they've closed it at that point, then we know that we're getting
Something.
That we're getting something, and
Right.
and if we start, we have time enough for public hearing, and then the additional time once we close the public hearing to get our decision taken care of. Anyone on the board feel otherwise? Okay, so with that, can I have somebody make a motion that if we get a closure of the hearing from the ZBA at their next meeting on the 22nd, that condition on that, we schedule our public hearing to begin at our March meeting on the 15th.
So moved.
Thank you, Pat. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jason. Noreen?
Aye.
Aye.
Pat Shea,
Aye.
Wade.
Aye.
Okay, so with that, the motion passes, and we're ready to move forward. Okay.
Well, that's all.
Now get it done on the 22nd.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Take care. Thank you.
Okay. So the next project we're going to be looking at tonight is J Squared.
Thank you.
Okay. Mike, welcome. If you would just introduce yourself and who you're with.
Sure.
For our minutes.
Super. Good evening. My name is Michael Morgante. For the record, I am the engineer for this application for J Squared Builders. It's before the board. So the last time we were here, which was early fall, might have been August.
Wasn't let Bonnie.
Sure.
Thank you.
We're pausing for you to get situated. You're welcome. She's
Sure.
the boss.
Fantastic. All right, we're rolling.
Yep. So I think last we were here, it might have been August. And during that time period, what we've done is worked with a landscape architect, Bob Hansen, to try to craft some kind of a landscaping plan that showed the replacement of trees, at the very least in the scenic view shed buffer, and then again towards the residences themselves that are being proposed for this project. And so that has been submitted to the board. There were some other outstanding cleanup items based on comment letters from the planning board consultants that we addressed, I think, most of. There may be still one or two cleanup items that still need to be addressed, but for the most part, it seems that the plans are in good order. We did receive a negative declaration today, a draft one, for our review. And so I think the only thing that's remaining at this point is for the board to review that landscaping plan. And if they concur with what's being shown, then we would like to have the board consider scheduling a public hearing for the March meeting.
Thank you. Sean, take us through your comments.
Sure. So, as Mike said, there's just a very couple minor items to be cleaned up on the plans. The one that I noticed was the stone wall fence along the scenic buffer corridor. we had discussed that last time, that you're going to reuse the existing stone wall fence and try to put it in between the driveways, so.
We absolutely will do that. I
Yeah.
apologize for not having enough time to actually show it on the plans for the submittal.
Sure, yeah, I mean, that's a relatively minor item. And then the other, I'll go to the procedural ones. We're still waiting on, I guess, official approvals from DPW on the driveway connections and the drainage improvements.
Yeah, we did have the conceptuals,
Right.
but since we've been fleshing out the landscaping portion of this, I didn't know if those driver locations would actually still change as a result of that. So if the board is in agreement that the landscaping plan is in order, these final plans will be sent to them for their approval at that point.
Okay. Sorry.
With regard to the landscaping, is Karen aren't reviewing that?
So I have not sent the latest plans to her because there's a significant amount of difference between the trees that are being proposed to be cut versus what's proposed to be installed. So I wanted to see what the board's feeling was on whether or not there should be a significant more amount of trees to be installed or not. So that was going to be
13 trees or something like that.
21 to be installed.
I have to look at the landscape plan a little more, but I guess my just base reaction would be, I think whatever, if she hasn't reviewed the next iteration, that I would like it to be sent to her to
Sure.
review.
Yeah.
Only because she looks at it more also from the perspective of the tree species related to what's being planted, is it the appropriate type?
Of course.
Yeah.
I understand that, but I would like to note that a lot of those 113 trees are also like where the houses are going to be located and where behind the houses. So I didn't count what the actual tree cutting numbers were in the area of the scenic buffer versus what we're planting. I think that probably.
Right, but the tree preservation law is over the entire lot, not just what's in the scenic buffer.
Understood, but I think a lot of what I heard from the board was more so the scenic buffer too. I mean, that seemed to be not that the other trees aren't a concern, but more so the scenic buffer itself.
Well, but are we talking about the landscaping plan or the tree removal plan?
We're talking about how many trees are going to be removed in that scenic buffer and how many are going to be replaced within that scenic buffer.
Okay. So, I mean, the scenic buffer is one element of it, but landscaping is to be proposed for the entire project. So, I mean, she should be looking at it comprehensively for all of that, correct?
Agreed. I don't disagree with that, but I would like the board, when they're weighing a decision, to also focus on what we're trying to do within that scenic buffer, which is the best that we can, considering, again, that we have very narrow lots, a very steep grade from the road to get into the property, and utilities, water, sewer, and electric utilities in between those properties, which it's a unique project. It makes it very difficult to do a one-to-one tree replacement for this project.
Let's continue on with the comments, and then why don't we revisit this? Yeah.
So back to the outside agency approvals, we had got that binding comment from Department of Planning regarding the Mudna sewer allocation, which I understand this is in sewer district number 1, but it was kind of surprising that it was included in this project, and I'm not sure if you had any update on that particular comment that the county planning made.
No, but if is Ashley still on? I think she.
Hold on.
Okay. Hi, Bonnie.
Oh, it's this one. Oh, perfect. We have a strip now. Yeah. Okay. All right. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ashley.
Sure. So I had spoken a little while back to the county attorney's office about that condition because it was showing up in this application and in the comments to, I think it was DG as well as a binding comment. But both of these subdivisions they are within Orange County Sewer District 1. So I was told that this comment, it's just gonna continue to be on all applications as part of their review now, just because they know now that the capacity is an issue. So they're not making an independent, they're not going to look at whether it's in the sewer district or not. They're just gonna have this consistently as a comment moving forward.
As a binding comment?
Well, it would be a binding comment, but it wouldn't be applicable here because you're in the sewer district. It
Okay,
would be
understood.
something that the town would have to address if you were outside of the sewer district.
Okay, that makes sense.
So I would advise the board that you can overrule this by supermajority in the event, it comes to time of approval by saying, you would explain in that overruling that it is because they are located within the sewer district, so they're not subject to that MUDNA capacity issue.
And then, continuing on with the outside agency approvals, we have the approval from the Village of Harriman for the outside, or for the applicant to enter into an agreement with the outside user agreement for the water connections. And there is conceptual approval from the sewer district for the proposed lateral connections, so.
Correct.
So then the only other, item back is going back to the tree plan. So, as Pat had said, there's 113 trees to be removed with 21 trees to be planted, mostly within the scenic buffer.
I have a question on that in terms of, or can be removed without violation of the code. Is it a 4-inch circumference or diameter?
6-inch,
6-inch.
so it'd be diameter at breast height.
Okay. I'm kind of surprised there were that many that, because a lot of when we walked the site there, it seemed like there were a lot of little scrub trees and stuff.
It is what it is. We measured them. Those are the calipers of the
Measured, okay.
trees. I'd like to tell you that they were less, but they're not. It is what it is that we have there. And I agree with you. It's deceiving. It did not look like it was actually that many trees. And maybe at our own benefit, we rounded up on some of those diameters, but it's noted now.
Are you through your comments? And did Ashley? Okay. Ashley, do you have comments?
Sure. So as the applicant's consultant indicated, I did prepare a draft negative declaration and short EAF Part 2 for the board's consideration. This was something the applicant was last before you, I think it was August, and I was authorized to do that for the following meeting, but they hadn't returned, so this is the first time they're returning since then. The big comment I have is with respect to the tree preservation law, and as Shauna noted, 113 trees are proposed to be removed, but only 21 are going to be replaced. So your tree law does require 1-to-1 replacement or some other basis that's acceptable to the planning board. And in that event, there is a fee of $750 per tree, which is being removed and not replaced, and a fee of $350 per tree that is being replaced on another site. So there's kind of two alternatives where the first, or three, I guess. The first is 1-to-1 replacement on the property. The second would be doing not 1-to-1 placement and just paying the $750 per tree that's not being replaced, or you can plant some trees on another site and then the fees reduced to $350. I do have a couple of just comments about some of the notes or designations on the tree plan and with respect to the scenic buffer note as well, but I could email Mike those, not to get down into the weeds with these more linguistic changes.
So, thank you, Jeff, for pinch hitting. And I was going to mention Ward is here, Ward Brower. He's been to that site. And I don't know if you have sort of an opinion in terms of what you think with regard to replacing trees versus having the fee in lieu, or the replacement fee. So if you want to come on up, Ward. We have a very small table there tonight. Why don't you go
can
to
sit right
Ashley's
there,
seat over here? So, and the tree plan is shown on the screen for everybody's benefit. That's the tree removal plan. And then we have a separate plan to get into with regard to the landscaping. Can you see that, Ashley? Oh, you can't see anything?
No, but I can pull it up on my end.
Okay. I wasn't sure what you can and can't. Why don't you let us know what your thoughts are?
The Ward Broward Conservation Commission. And when we walked this last year, we noted that in the back of the half lot, there were a lot of ash trees which were, unfortunately, like the rest of the ash in the town. We're going to have to be removed sooner probably than better because they're going to die and become a hazard. So those trees, you're not going to, 113 trees that are being removed, a good portion of those could be different species, one was more durable, and start replacement trees on the back. And then you have an opportunity, you can plant them at proper distances where nature casts seeds. That doesn't always happen, but we have that opportunity now to take advantage of those extra trees. Rather than put them on some other part of the town, you're going to need them here. So that's our recommendation on that.
It's interesting that the trees really are a mix. So I definitely see the ash here in the table, but we also have pine and maples, hickories.
By memory now, so I may make a mistake, and I hope not. Senility is creeping up on me. But anyway.
On all of us.
Yeah, there are some hickories in there, we saw, which are very durable, long-term things. There were, I believe, a couple oaks in there. And the maples were sugar maples, again, a long-term species. The problem in this area, and it's been for the last 50 or so years with the sugar maples, if they get alongside the highway salt has a detrimental effect on those. But back inside, they'll be fine. And those are the ones that I would try to stress for. They're stately trees. They require very little maintenance. Going for the pines aren't really a natural tree. They were the neighbors, if you go up Harriman Heights, planted a lot of white pines 50 years ago, 40 years ago, and they see themselves down. And they can be more of a problematic tree. They grow 6-7 foot a year, and oftentimes they become a maintenance problem. Ice takes down limbs and stuff like that. But it's not really a natural tree in a natural sense that nature would have put that white pines in that area.
Okay.
But they're just a species that reclaim areas very quickly. Any other?
Yeah, I'm just looking at this plan and thinking about it. So we have tree removal going beyond what appears to be like the limits of disturbance toward the back of the property. Why are those being removed, or those are flagged? Those are just flagged. So you're only removing the trees that are within that limits of disturbance where the X's
correct.
are?
That's right,
Okay.
yes.
So I don't know if there's opportunity to preserve any, like if there are hickories, for example. So if I'm looking at the southerly lot, the southerly property line, and to the rear of the 4-bedroom house along that side lot line, see how you have like 332, 333, 335, those X'd out that are right along the property line? If there were hickories or decent trees there on that side yard, could some of them be preserved?
Refer to the applicant on that. I would imagine that
I'm trying to keep, so they'd be on the sides as opposed to like right and smack in the
Yeah,
backyard.
I think 332 through 335 could be potentially preserved, if those are the numbers that you're looking at.
Right. And then I'm thinking, if I were to look at then the property line itself.
And I would note that it's a maple, a cherry, and a maple, so those are some nice trees we'd be preserving.
Okay. So, are you following, Ward? So we're talking about right on the edge where the chain link fence is, 332, 333, 335. And then is it possible, if you look at like 302, 303, they're right along the property line? I mean, do you think they'd want to install a fence or
You mean along the limits of disturbance?
between,
Oh, on the property line?
right
near
on the,
yes.
between the two?
Yeah, along the limits of disturbance.
So kind of right 302, 303, right in there.
Let's see what those are. Well, 302 is an ash. 303 is a maple. 304 is a maple. I'd say that the maples are worth keeping.
And then take out so the ash isn't really a,
Unfortunately, ash is a threatened and endangered species in our town.
okay. And then I think if we, again, just going down the side lot lines, if they're really hugging up against the side lot line, so for instance, the northerly lot, when you look at the grading, I could see having to remove those right along the lot line because you're grading into almost up to the property line there, right?
Where are you exactly at this point?
So now I'm looking at the northerly lot along the northerly property line. You can't really preserve a lot there in terms of trees because
Too
you're
close
grading
to
out
the, yeah, too close, yeah.
to the property line.
Correct.
But if I go back again to the southerly property line, for that single-family house, and now you start to come in the front yard, you've got 264, 263, 261 kind of hugging that line again, and it doesn't look like there's grading, at least at that point. We're not yet into the grading to like get the driveway in.
They're just awfully close to the house.
261 is, how far do you think that is from the house?
Well, 261 potentially, 263 and 264, especially 264.
Yeah, I'd say 264. I wouldn't disagree. 263, I don't know what the scale is on this.
We can do our best with 261 and 263. I mean, I can't.
Yeah, I would agree. 264 is probably too close. But if 61 and 63 are not ashes,
3 is a maple, 264 is an oak.
Yeah, that 260 close.
you said to the oak is too close, or is that 261?
I'm sorry, 263 and 261, I apologize. So 261 is still an oak,
Okay.
yeah. So 261 is an oak and 263 is a maple. So one oak and one maple.
So right along the property line in the front, but is there grading, well, you have the sewer and the water, so all of that has to come out. And then you have the driveways.
Correct.
So and you have your tree fences, so you're preserving some trees in the front. So then, when I walked in, I guess you were talking about what can occur within the scenic buffer, or what, is that where we were?
Yeah, I think I was just trying to note that we're trying to plant whatever trees we can within the scenic buffer, the best that we can, that it's not impacting any of the utilities that we're proposing.
So, are these undergrounded? Electric, where?
Everything.
Everything is, yeah.
Everything is within the public right-of-way?
So you have, the utilities go from essentially Harriman Heights Road and straddle both sides of the common property line and then turn into both houses. So the entire portion between both driveways and houses has got utilities in between it, which makes it, really impossible to plant anything there.
The electric's overhead on your side of the road in the right-of-way, and you're bringing that underground.
That's
for both.
correct, yeah.
So, in terms of what you're proposing, this is the planting plan.
Correct. And that was one of the things I discussed with the board about the rock wall. In lieu of the trees that we could plant in that area, we would be glad to place that. We'd take the stone that's on site and build the actual stone wall along that scenic buffer line that's shown.
I guess one question would be, there are a couple of plantings that are showing within the right-of-way, the public right-of-way, if I'm reading this correctly. Would DPW allow that?
Looking at the plan too, one thing I would like to note is that with a stone wall and the change in elevation, that stone wall may actually help to aid in, you know what I'm saying, a visual buffer to the residences that are going to be constructed also. But let me look at what you're asking me. Yeah, so there's actually 2 trees, it looks like, that will potentially be planted within the actual right-of-way there. That would be one of the cornice, and the other one is the one amel over there.
Last year?
But has DPW seen that?
I think they've seen this now.
I mean, are they going to allow it?
I think what we could do,
Well, I would note that the right-of-way is very wide there, but more than likely not.
I mean, I wouldn't have a problem approving it, but I don't know that we actually
Have the
have a
right to,
say,
yeah.
and that they're not going to disappear after you plant them.
I can talk to the landscape architect and see if we can slide some of the trees to the north and the west up a little bit to get those inside the property line. I mean, it might become a little too congested at that point, but if the DPW would be interested in allowing us to do that, we'd be glad to, 100% glad to. If not, that could be one suggestion I could provide.
Did Steve Esposito do this, or who did this?
Bob Hansen.
Bob? No, I don't know Bob.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing, and this is just for the applicant's benefit, is that if I recall, the southerly property, as you get back, the northerly property that fronts to 17. So this is abutting a property that fronts to 17M.
Southerly property?
Sorry, the northerly lot, the proposed northerly lot and the proposed northerly dwelling abuts a property that I think is non-residential that fronts to 17M,
Cars.
right? Is there, because I know there's the residential in front, but when I walk the line, at some point, you can see or you're against, I thought, a non-residential property. And
You can see, I think, that transmission parcel, that commercial site, you can
Okay.
see it from our property. But if you take a look at any of the preceding plans, you'll see there's an existing 1.5-story dwelling almost that abuts our property line.
Right up here.
And it's actually the southerly property line, property you're talking about, I think. Because if you look at the arrows on the map, it would be what we're...
northerly facing 17M? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've done what we can to plant. I mean, I feel that as though if you take a look at the landscaping plan, we've done a pretty good job of planting trees between that proposed Lot 1 driveway and that property line on that side. I mean, we've put in as much as we can that's reasonable.
Yeah, no, I was actually thinking that where you might want the planting isn't in fact,
Behind the building, behind the house.
I'm wondering actually for screening purposes behind, unless that's just something that the homeowner's gonna do as part of their own landscaping. But I would be more concerned, because I think, again, north and as you continue to the east, I thought, again, you're starting to get to that non-residential property, but, well, we should also talk about this wall concept too. Let's not let go of that. Go ahead.
Sorry, just on that tax map or the abutting, there's only about 50 feet or so in the rear that abuts the non-residential.
Okay,
It's the very back of the property, yeah.
Yeah.
right in here.
By
I think it may just that we could
No,
see.
it would be that.
This is
that,
the-
exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
but I think there was like a view shed, because I remember
Sure.
seeing when we were up there that you were, but again, that's probably something that you're not proposing to remove anything, and that's something
No.
that the homeowner can do.
Correct, and there is vegetation there. It's just below 6 inches in diameter, so we're not required to show it on the plan.
Okay. So speak to the wall concept and what you would build, and to what extent could it even go across the lot lines if you have these utilities there?
Yeah, so I would imagine we would be looking at maybe like a 4-foot wall.
Okay.
Just a regular stacked stone type wall with whatever's on site. I don't see there being any issue with those utilities because it would be stacked. So that if there was any reason in that location to perform any work on utilities, you could remove the rock wall in that location, work there, and then replace the rock wall. That's how I would propose it.
So the rock wall would come in next to the proposed dwelling. It'd have a cut, obviously, for the driveway, for the two driveways, but it would go all the way from the north to the south along Harriman Heights Road?
Correct, and I would propose that rock wall literally across the scenic road buffer boundary line that I've got shown there.
As the property line, at the property line?
So I would place it from the southerly property line on Lot 1.
Okay.
I would come across to the driveway on Lot 1. Obviously, we can't put it across the driveway.
Right.
I would continue on the other side of the driveway of Lot 1 to the driveway of Lot 2. I don't think there's any issue with us placing any of these loose stone rock walls on top of proposed utilities. Obviously, we'd stop at the driveway for Lot 2, continue it all the way across to the northerly property line for Lot 2.
And just follow the property line?
That's not a property line. That's the boundary for the scenic road buffer line.
Where's the property line?
The property
20
lines
feet
are running
inside
east
that.
and west along this paper.
Right, so I'm looking, I don't know if you can see my cursor.
That's a right-of-way line.
This is the property line, right?
Right, yep,
So
I'm actually, we can
you're
propose.
talking about doing it here,
right.
Correct.
at the setback?
Yeah, because
That's
would-
not the setback, that's the
That's the
scenic.
scenic
scenic
buffer.
road
Right.
buffer line. The reason, it's the board's purview. I mean, it doesn't matter, I don't think, to me or the applicant which location you choose, but the further back you set it, the more visual screening it may provide you, because you're going to be at a higher elevation. So that's just my suggestion. If the board would like this along the actual frontage where the property line, right, is in common with the right-of-way for Harriman Heights Road, that's fine by us also.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like most of the change in grade is right here in the front, right? Right up in here.
Correct.
And so you could, it doesn't have to necessarily follow exactly the property line. It looks like if you were to put it right up here on that part of the property line, you've already reached that height, kind of where it came up.
Fine by us, yeah.
And then if you continue it, it's the same thing. You've already reached this height. The only place where you might want to vary is instead of dropping it down, obviously here, you would just
Continue it
continue
straight
it
across, yeah.
straight across,
Yeah.
above, at the top. If the board were to agree. But is that in lieu of trees, or that's to make up for the lack of trees that are being planted? Sort of what's the proposal that you're proposing for the wall?
However you want to call it. I mean, we're trying the best we can with the rock wall it would be in lieu of trees, I think, and as a result of us requiring the removal of so many trees.
Plus the fact that the scenic buffer states that you want to try to preserve the walls. There is one that goes through the parcel. I wouldn't call it all the way in the buffer. Actually, you can see it right there on the driveway of Lot 1. Nope. Up further up.
Oh, yeah, this one.
Yep.
That could be relocated
That's
Right.
what we're,
and then supplemented.
correct. That's
Okay.
exactly what we had
And
discussed.
you think you have enough for 4 feet? You do your best?
Well, because of the
Make
fact
more
that we're having a
rocks.
hard time with the trees, we're going to make it 4 feet. We'll make it happen.
Ashley, do you have any comments on this discussion? I know it's hard for you since you can't see.
I have my map here, so I was
Following.
going to ask about the wall as well, actually, because I know that was something the board had discussed previously, and then I thought they were going to be putting it in somewhere, so I'm glad you're having this discussion.
So I mean, I'm amenable to a stone wall because I think that is adding back the character, which was the purpose of the scenic buffer.
Agreed.
And I think that if you have the stone wall there and you're still dotting it with some, trees and landscaping that kind of naturalizes it, that's fine too. I have no problem with you putting them in the right-of-way, but I don't know that DPW will, and I don't know if that can be explored. I think you said you could explore it.
I can certainly contact them. If either you want me to or one of the board consultants to it, you let us know.
And then I think there are some individual trees that you could consider potentially saving as opposed to removing, the ones that are really at you
Take
know,
no exception
right
to
at
any of the
lot
ones you had
lines.
already suggested.
Yeah, and maybe just to explore it a little more.
Yeah,
What you think?
we can take a look and see if there's anything else.
In all honesty, I almost think you're going to be spinning your wheels if you ask DPW to put the trees there.
I
'cause-
agree.
Yeah, I think
I
you
agree.
probably are.
I do. I 100% agree with that.
You probably are. All right, let's nix that then. Let's just figure out, maybe you could push some back or what we could do to maybe just change it up a little bit since you can't put them there. What do the board members think? Why don't we start with Jason? What are your thoughts on all this?
I'll be honest with you, trees are still not my strong suit, not my forte. I think so long as we are coming up with some sort of solution that is both fair to the applicant as well as the environment, then
Say thank you, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm amenable to everything we've discussed tonight. I'm particularly interested in tree 261, where it's a 24-inch oak. I mean, I know that's a little bit of a sizable tree to work around, but that's a significant tree on the property. And since it's along the property line, I truly hope that you find a way to preserve that. And I would like, as you just said, to explore preserving as many trees in those boundary areas right along the back buffer. I did note that the limited disturbance along the back behind the houses kind of takes a bit of a jog in a couple of places, and I don't know if that's because you're trying to, obviously disturb as little as possible. And I mean, there's not much of a need behind the northerly house because there's not much in the way of significant trees until you get back where there would already be a backyard. But again, particularly along the property line, anything that could be preserved there, I've always liked the concept of realigning that rock wall and really adds to the character of the street in that area.
I think it will.
From when we walk the property, I think it's just going to fit in really nice, and you're kind of at one entry to the town on one of the significant roads as you cross out of the village of Harriman, so, how nice will that be?
Jeff, to your question, you mentioned the jog is that just because there's not a lot of trees there, so you didn't feel the need to disturb there, or?
Yes, that's correct. I don't believe there's a lot of trees in that area, and whatever is there, again, is saplings, probably mostly. So I don't think we'll need to actually do much of any work in that location.
I also like the idea of trying to do the wall near the top of the rise, or just beyond that. I think you'll get the most bang for your buck, both visually with the wall and as a screening technique as well. I don't think it needs to be along the scenic buffer line necessarily, especially, I feel like once we got to the top of the rise, the property just kind of
Level down.
gently slopes down all the way to the back. And I'm not an expert on trees myself, but I did Google all the various species that you're proposing in the landscape plan, and I like the variety of them. Frankly,
I think it'll look very nice, actually. I mean, especially on lot 1, because you have that little bit of a bend in the driveway. So it's going to create a nice little nook, I think, in that location where you're going to have a nice variety of trees, and that, I think, plus the stone wall will add actually a lot of character to these lots.
And along with the curve of the driveways, I think it's going to make a really nice curb appeal to the front of the property in general. So I'm fairly positive about what you proposed at this point.
Thank you.
Pat, do you have comments?
I'm on the board with the plan. I like the stone wall idea there very much. I just have a question, I guess, for Sean. On the tree plan, the trees that are cut down that are in the footprint of the building are still considered trees you have to pay for, I guess, if you cut them down?
Yeah, my understanding, and maybe Ashley can speak to it a little better, is that any tree has to be, you know, mitigated either by replacement or payment in lieu.
Technical question.
Yes, that's correct. Any tree over, I think it was the 6 dBH.
Diameter, yeah. What's it?
Each
DBH.
diameter at breast
Okay.
height.
Oh, learning a new acronym, so that's good.
My forest ecology and civiculture class actually paid off.
Good for you. Lisa, do you have comments?
But I'm going to send you out next time to identify the trees for me.
Pat, was that,
I didn't
was
take
that anything
dendrology.
else you want to add?
Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Lisa?
So, Mike, this is a question and it's not a.
Lower your mic.
criticism, not a criticism.
Our mic is muted on the mic.
Sorry about that, I moved it, so. The wall, is that for aesthetic purposes? Is it for privacy?
I think it's both. I think
Both, okay.
it'll add some nice curb appeal to the site and also provide some visual buffer between the road and the dwellings.
I totally see that point. The height of it, a 4-foot-high stacked stone wall, what keeps it together? Is it going to start to lean? You worry about maybe kids climbing on it? Like, I don't know how high the wall is anyway. I've never seen a 4-foot-high, like, stacked stone wall. They're usually much shorter. So I was just wondering where that comes from.
We could, I mean, they do make them that tall. We can do that. I mean, it takes, it's an art, you have to get a good mason who's a real artisan out there. You have to really find the shape of each stone, and you have to make sure you find another shape that kind of fits with it. It seems to be very difficult, but my father was a pretty good mason back in the day, and I watched him do it quite a few times. And if you're good at what you do, it'll come out pretty good.
So if I look at stacked stone wall, these are the images that come up. But is that really what you're doing, or are you just
Bottom
taking
left.
the cobbles and kind of putting them?
Bottom left.
Sorry?
Gotta come up by the mic, please, Paul.
Right.
On the mic.
Mike,
On the
Mike.
mic.
I was thinking of the same concept, Paul Edwards, applicant, J Square Builders, but it's kind of to match the architectural, what's existing. There's stone walls on the side that demise the property, and I wasn't going to build an architectural stone wall over there, because if you think about it, it's about 10 feet from the street, then you're going to add a 4-foot wall. You're blocking the sun and blocking any view of the house you could ever see from the street. You'd never be able to see anything because you're set down so low in a car or walking by. So I think you're defeating the whole purpose. You're just blocking the view of the houses.
What height did you envision?
Similar to what's existing on the property. It's kind of, it's like a farmer's stone walls. I
Yeah.
was going to mound them up so it looks definitive, like you created that to be there, but it looks natural too, as if we could have just separated where the driveway goes through and, we replace it where the utility trenches are.
Yeah, it's hard to see. I'm trying to see if we could capture it on this
It's kind of on the right side of the property over there. I guess that was.
right here.
Yeah.
it's
on-
right,
on the
like, over
On
here.
the right side over there.
Right. Yeah, I'm just, with Google, I'm just not capturing it.
There, though, you can see it's probably a lot of leaves on there now in that image, but.
What I'd imagine is this, Paul. So, to your point, I think that, right, that wall's been there not decades, but over 100 years. And like all of those walls, they tend to slump and settle over time. What I'd kind of like to see is, your version or your mason's version of what it would have looked like when it was originally done. Not necessarily a 4-foot height, but it was probably 2 feet, 2.5 feet, maybe
Less
30
spread out,
inches.
Less
Right.
spread out, more defined.
And
That's kind
so
of what
it-
I envisioned also.
Right. I think it would look,
Right.
to use my dad's word, sharp. But it would keep that historical context.
And you see that it's very common in
Yeah.
all lots you see in Orange County. There's demising walls that the farmers made in the, turn of the last century.
Yeah,
And they
so
plowed 'em up?
that's actually what I thought. I thought you were going to so basically they would take the stone out when they were creating the field, right? So that they could cultivate
Pile it up as
And
a
then they just
division,
piled them up as stone walls. So I thought you were just going to move those and put them in the front.
Right. But it would look,
But because you're creating it and stacking it, it's not going to have that over time, and, you know, they've been weathered, so they kind of just fall and they slump, and like you said, I thought it would just be more defined because of the fact that you're, you know, putting it in a new place.
May I chime in a little?
Jess, please.
Thank you. If you study rock walls, and they are actually stone walls because stone is cut right, Bonnie's correct. When the farmers got in here, they had a lot of glacial till, a lot of rocks, stone. And the concept basically is you set two walls leaning into each other. They're the ones, you'll see 200-year-old walls, plus they're still very stable. If you put, I've seen some on Conklin Road in particular, you've probably been over there. Some mason went in there, they set up two vertical rows of rocks, half of those fell over. You got it, gravity is an amazing force. Frost is an amazing force. You got, the old timers realized this is how you work with them. If you set two walls leaning towards the center, they will stand, and barring humans removing them, that's the most effective way to do it. No mortar, no cement, just gravity.
You know, to Lisa's point and concern, if you look at, when you're coming into Town Hall, the wall around the flagpoles, the stone there, or around the sign out front, the electric sign. So those were created as part of two separate Eagle projects. So two 17-year-olds led a bunch of guys who had never done anything with stone to create those. So it's doable. It's very doable. And now we're talking about having an expert mason create something, you know, out of this existing rock wall. It's actually easier than it sounds, believe it or not. A lot of it comes down to looking at the stone and figuring out how to piece the puzzle together.
Yeah, I thought this is like you were just going to restack them, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. You know, these are just old stone walls, and you're restacking them, but when you're restacking them, you're doing it in a way that... Right.
Depends on the mason. Now, there are good stone masons that will, first of all, as Jeff points out, you gotta have an eye for it. You take shapes, you have to put them in. But then you need what they call chinking. And there's smaller pieces go in and lock in. And it's like a puzzle. And properly done, they're very durable. They outlast most homes and other man-made structures. Great Wall of China.
I thought I heard you were doing this.
Project may last for a while.
I just showed a
2,000
picture of the
years.
Chinese wall.
Paul just had a heart attack.
I'm feeling left out over here.
Yeah, we wish you were here.
Thing is,
So,
it would kill me if I do all of this work and then the homeowner comes in and hates it and knocks it all down and says,
Yeah.
I hate this.
so I think we have, well, if we're in agreement, the sense is that you're taking what is there and you're going to apply it. And so can we just talk about the 4 feet? Is it going to be 4 feet, or it's more like 3 feet?
Definitely less.
Yeah, I would say 3 is like probably right
When you
there.
talk, Mike, you have to switch back
I think
to the
4
mic.
sounds a little high
Tall.
to me. Yeah, but I
There's a
think
ratio.
3.
There's a ratio to the bottom width
Yep.
to the top. You have to maintain that. You don't want vertical. It has to be slightly going in, so, yeah.
I think I have a
The
detail.
higher you get, the wider the bottom's gonna be.
Okay.
And that's really much basic, simple geometry.
Okay. Well, so I think we want the stone wall, and we want the vegetation, and we want select trees to kind of hone in and still protect a few more trees along the lot lines. So I think there's consensus on that, right? And the stone wall may be 3 feet, not 4 feet, you know, because I think ultimately you have to work with what's there, and I don't know how much stone is there. 'Cause it's not showing up readily on the images.
I thought on the 4 feet was simply to, create
Yeah.
more of a visual buffer, and if we think 3 feet's fine, then I'm in agreement with that.
I'm okay with 3, if everybody else is. Ward, I wanted to ask you quick, this plant list, do these look like plants that would be reasonable for this area? Oh, it's white fir, autumn brilliance serviceberry, green sleeves Japanese dogwood, golden glory dogwood, chanticleer pear.
Not indigenous, native species here,
Right.
but we have to enter into another concept, and that is what's a mature tree look like? Some that you can get into where you put a tree, as we saw when we walked that other project this summer, where they birch were planted.
On the mic.
They were way too big. So make sure that you get trees that are semi-dwarfed, and we'll take our, I say climate, but climate's is a moving target anymore. So we have to be careful.
So I think we'll share this with Karen, just so she can look at it from that perspective, just maybe mix in some natives. And not something that's going to grow massive, but something that's going to provide that buffer, so that
That was the conversation I had with the landscape architect.
right,
Proposed those trees.
yeah. Because these do look like ornamentals mostly to me, so,
They're not native in this area.
right. So we can have Karen take a look at it.
Good idea. Also, Cornell Recommends has a list that comes out, they revise every 4 or 5 years.
Right.
So Karen probably, I'm sure she's aware of it.
Yeah, because I think you want something that's a combination of somewhat ornamental, because it's a residential lot, for the benefit of the homeowners there, but also something that still fits in, because the whole point of this is the buffer, it's the scenic road, it's supposed to be somewhat native, because, we're trying not to remove vegetation. But again, we don't want to have overwhelming growth in the front either.
That's a big mistake. Landscape architects or people get in there, they have trees which have a finite lifespan, like probably 15 years, and then they're, and unless you maintain them, prune them once a year, and most homeowners do not do that. Next thing you know, right down the street from where this is, trees were developed and were put in about 40 years ago. Right now, they're removing them because they're hazard. They're going out, they're falling on people's on roofs and everything else. So they look good 40 years ago. They look good for a couple of years, but not good in the long run.
Right.
And you always have to go in the adage, the homeowner is not going to maintain them.
I agree. All right, so in terms of process now, so we'll be updating the landscape plan, but that's just that's a particular sheet in the plan set. So I think the objective this evening, Ashley, was that we were going to review the part 2, pass a negative declaration so that we're able to open the public hearing, and then I guess in the meantime we can take care of the landscape sheet. Does that make sense?
Yes, it would be, you could review the part 2 and the draft neg deck, and then if you adopt that, you could schedule the public hearing.
Okay. All right, so I think we have sort of a plan for the landscaping.
We'll continue to flesh it out with the board, no problem.
Okay, and then, so what I would suggest is maybe that, sorry, let me just get out of this. Well, I guess the question is, do you want Karen to take a look at the plan and then you make the revisions? Or you want to make it probably makes sense for Karen to look at it now. Okay, so we'll send this plan to Karen and then get them to you so you can make the revisions. Okay.
I mean, in case we are not able to make those revisions, I know Karen's been pretty busy, so we would need to get a response from her fairly quickly. Being that this is a very minor landscaping plan, I would imagine she can review it pretty quickly. So
Yeah, I'd hope so.
if there could be some coercion from the board and the consultants to help out with that, it would be tremendously appreciated.
That's the word you want to use?
Coercion, yes.
Okay. All right, so with that, let's really, let's scan down the short environmental assessment form. This is the Part 2 impact assessment, where we determine whether or not the proposed action would have a significant adverse impact. And if it does, you have a pause deck, and if you don't, you do the negative declaration. So we've been working with this project for a while. Here are the questions. Thank you, Ward. I appreciate it. So they're the 2 columns, no or small impact may occur, or moderate to large impact may occur. And if it's moderate to large, the applicant has to explain how a project modification would address it. So if we just scan through here, will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulation? I would say that's no. Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land? That's a yes, because you're changing from vacant to residential, but it's not a significant adverse impact. It's consistent with what the zoning allows. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? I would say no, it's residential, consistent with what's there, and while you are affecting the buffer, you're proposing landscaping and a wall to enhance that. Will the proposed action have an impact on environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area? That isn't a CEA, so that's a no. Will the proposed action result in any adverse impact in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure? That would be a no. These are only 2 houses, so we're not talking about a significant number of trips being generated. Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy, and if fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? These houses have to meet whatever the energy code requires. So that's kind of built into the construction. And if anybody disagrees, please comment. Will the proposed action impact existing public or private water supplies, public-private wastewater treatment utilities? While there be demand placed on these facilities, there are only 2 homes, so it's not significant. Will proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? We've touched upon that. It really has to do, I think, with the scenic buffer, and that's being addressed. Will the proposed action result in any adverse change to natural resources, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, and fauna? There is removal of trees, but again, this is a 2-lot subdivision, and it's under an acre, if it's even less than an acre, so while there's an impact, it's not considered significant. Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? Are you tying into the stormwater system, or is it going to be sheet flow?
So there are some culverts proposed at the bottom of each driveway that are required for Orange County Department of Public Works, but otherwise everything will continue to sheet flow off the site. It'll go into that roadside ditch and enter the county's drainage system that way.
Okay. Will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? The answer is no. These are 2 houses, so it's not introducing anything that would be considered hazardous. So that is the part 2. So would everybody agree that this project is not likely to have a significant adverse impact on the environment based on that review? Would agree? All right.
Agree.
Yes. So we will bring up the negative declaration that Ashley has drafted. So this is the notice of determination of non-significance. The name of the action is J Squared Builders, Inc. subdivision. We are the lead agency. February 10th is today's date. This is an unlisted action. And again, applicant is proposing a minor 2-lot subdivision containing 0.92 acres along Harriman Heights Road. It's in the SR15 residential district. 2 lots are proposed. And then Ashley provides a short synopsis of our review of the part 2. EAF indicates that site could contain northern long-eared bat. There would be no significant adverse impacts, and you are adhering to the tree clearing restriction?
But we're hoping to be able to cut trees before the March 31st deadline.
Gotcha. New York State DEC EAF mapper indicated that there was a hazardous waste site adjacent to this property. That was a tank failure at a private property on Harriman Heights Road, and that's been addressed. And it's not very close to the proposed site. So those were the 2 items that came up in the environmental assessment form. So with that, I would make a motion that the Town of Monroe Planning Board find that the action will not have any significant adverse environmental impacts, and no further environmental review is necessary, so we propose to adopt this negative declaration. May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Noreen?
Jason Sorinsky,
Aye.
Jeff Manson,
Aye.
Bonnie Franson,
Aye.
Pat Shea,
Aye.
Lisa McQuaid.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, so we issued a negative declaration. So the next step would be to make a motion to set a public hearing, Ashley? And what is the date? What date would it be?
March
Yes,
15th.
that would be March 15th, I believe.
Okay. So would someone make a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
So Jeff makes the motion that we'll hold the public hearing, open it on March 15th, 2022, at 7:15 PM or soon thereafter. Would someone please second that?
I'll second.
That's Lisa. Noreen?
Jason Sorinsky,
Aye.
Jeff Manson,
Aye.
Bonnie Franson,
Aye.
Pat Shea,
Aye.
Lisa McQuaid.
Aye.
And with that, the motion carries. So we've set a public hearing for March. When can you start the trees? The public hearing's March 15th.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't think it's going to take us less than a day to cut the trees, to actually fell them.
You have till March till-
He's already got his chainsaws sharpened and ready to
Okay.
go.
All right, so I think that's all we have to address for this evening, and it's just a matter of the landscaping plan, addressing that, and any other outstanding engineering comments.
And the addition of the stone wall fence.
Yes, yeah. We'll put
And you'll show that with the detail?
Yep.
Whatever you, okay.
That's fine.
All right, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So next item is Pilati. Do,
Mike,
did we skip over BJ's?
No, we moved BJ's to last because we needed to make sure you were here.
Oh, duh. Because of Jeff not being able to. Okay, sorry.
No, we just like the crowd, so we're gonna make them stay all night.
All right, so, well, I guess a question, so Mike is up at the,
They're next on the agenda,
but BJ's is next.
not on the
well,
revised agenda.
well, you put them at the end? Did the board
Yeah,
agree to
because
put them at
Ashley
the
said
end?
we needed to move them.
Okay. Oh, okay, so I'm working off of an older one, thank you.
Yeah, they got bumped to the end so that you would
Okay.
be here, because we weren't sure your time frame.
Got it. I didn't know if you did that informally. I didn't
No,
have the
actually, I have
updated
the one here.
agenda.
Oh, well, I don't know. when
That's
I
why I'm working
emailed.
off of this one. Okay. So it's probably me. All right, so Pilati.
Yes. Mike's plans weren't so big, they wouldn't be so hard to fold.
I'm going to work on that moving forward. But anyways, so last we were here, oh, by the way, I have Frank Filiciotto with us tonight. He's our traffic consultant. I know that some of the board members had some concerns, so I made sure to bring Frank, and I'll turn it over to him in due time for his discussion on the traffic portion of the project. But
What's Frank's last name?
Filiciotto, you want to spell, I mean, I know how to spell it, but do you want to spell it?
F is in Frank, I-L-I-C-I-O-T-T-O.
Oh, you need to be on the mic. George didn't hear it.
F is in Frank, I-L-I-C-I-O-T-T-O.
Thank you.
So our main focus for the last few meetings has been the stormwater pollution prevention plan and the grading plan, and we continue to work on that. So we had made an original submittal regarding that to the board. Sean's office had reviewed that, made some comments. We had addressed those comments and have resubmitted. And there are still some comments from their office, which are well received. There are several of them are a lot of housekeeping items where I'm just needing to coordinate watershed names with what's shown on the model versus the plans, updating pipe elevations and rims to match the model, There's a lot of those type of comments which I believe we can work through. So I will make a resubmittal probably shortly, hopefully for the March meeting, for Sean's office to continue to review that. For the most part, from my perspective, I feel that the SWIP is heading in the right direction. And, I think with this round of comments, it's becoming clearer that what I've got shown in some fashion or form is going to work. So there's been other technical comments that we've received from his office. However, again, just my particular design approach is to work on the stormwater and the grading plan to make sure that those major components are functioning properly, and it helps me to flesh out what's remaining for utility placement, wells, water treatment supply, and that kind of stuff. So I'll do the best I can with this next submittal to start working towards some of those other items that were on Sean's list. I may not certainly get to all of them because it's a lot of work to do, but I'll do the best I can to give another set of progress drawings to the board for their review. I will defer at that point right now to the board and the consultants to ask me any questions or go over any of the comments, and I can provide some whatever responses are necessary.
So why don't we start with our engineer, and then we'll ask Ashley, and then we'll go through the any planning board comments.
Sure. So I did note, like Mike said, that there's a number of water and sewer as well as driveway modification comments that are still outstanding, but I understand Mike's approach that he's trying to make sure that his building location and stormwater locations are squared away before those are resolved. One of the items that the board had questioned last time was regarding parking. The parking demand by zoning wasn't met last time, but Mike's revised that to provide the required parking pursuant to the zoning. SHPO. So phase 1 archaeological study was performed, and SHPO's gotten back that they've accepted and didn't ask for additional archaeological studies. It looked like there was a response from DEC on the initial submission for the wastewater treatment plant modification.
Is it all right if I interrupt you for 1 second?
Sure.
So we did make some progress too on the flow meter.
Okay.
So it turns out that the overflow meters for the primary clarifier and the transducer, there were some issues. So we basically scraped off some of the crud, and because what was happening is the water level were rising too high on that weir, which was tricking the meter into thinking there was too much flow. So we've already gotten the first few, and it's just happened on Tuesday. So the last 2 days of flows are more in line with what we've been seeing for water production for that facility. So we should be in good shape as we continue to move forward. And we're going to recalibrate the actual meter itself I think tomorrow.
So the board had previously asked for visual assessments from the Appalachian Trail as well as other locations on the property. So we look forward to seeing that. I'm sorry, other properties within 5 miles. Previously, it was noted that the EAF had a potential spill within the vicinity. So you were going to provide a review of that.
I was a little loud, sorry about that. I just didn't get a chance to before that last meeting, but I did actually look at it today. And I actually emailed it to Noreen, and I did bring a hard copy with me tonight too. Okay. So that's now been, I emailed it to you at like 6:30.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
I don't remember her email.
Just before the meeting, yeah. So you didn't probably actually see it yet, but that has been submitted, and there was nothing of significance in the record.
All right, good. And Bonnie, I sent you earlier today that map. So the applicant's representatives prepared a geotechnical evaluation for the site. So one of the maps is this one that was provided. If you go to the northern site, where the multifamily dwellings are noted. So I guess it'd be the northeastern building. You'll kind of see like a circled area. That building is noted to be on between 7 and 12.5 feet of fill, which the geotechnical engineer is noting to be removed. So with that being said, I think it would be helpful to know how much fill actually has to be removed from the site.
Is it just land or is it fill? Like
Fill. It's noted to be fill.
Okay.
Yeah, so when the grading plan in the SWIP's done, I can actually provide, cut and fill calculations.
Okay.
And we can address that area specifically.
So the note reported that, or the report noted that the fill could be used on site. However, it's very wet, so it would have to be dried. So some type of drying.
Yeah, the workability of it. So typically they'll excavate it, spread it out, let it aerate out and dry out, and then it can probably be used, probably not for structural fill.
Exactly. That's what the report says. It can be used under pavement, but not under a building.
Yeah, I would
Why-
imagine. Yeah.
Is it wet because it's next to the wetland?
Because there's a lot of groundwater noted on
High
the
water
site.
table,
Right.
groundwater?
Well, a combination of high rock means the water can't get.
Oh, it's perching above the rock?
Right.
Okay. Is there rock there too?
So that's the next point. So you'll kind of see an odd-shaped, kind of a balloon shape, and then a weird part in the center underneath the northwestern multifamily building, going down. You can you can see it right there. So the darker shade. Exactly. So that's where rock is less than 5 feet from the surface, or outcropping. So I think it's important to note that, or to understand how, if blasting is going to be necessary, or if hammering is.
We can take a look.
Sure.
Is this something that was in my report or something you prepared?
No, that's what
Yeah, that's what I
the
thought. Okay,
applicant's
just wanted to make sure.
geotech
Yeah.
prepared.
It was the Melick-Tully preliminary subsurface
Yeah,
investigation.
just wanted to double check, that's all, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I had for the geotech. So basically what I'm trying to drive at is, with the potential differential settlement to occur underneath the northwesternmost building, I didn't know if that was potentially going to shift based on the geotech's recommendations.
Well, let me engage the applicant to take that report, start working with either a structural engineer, his geotechnical engineer, and an architect to see what their thoughts might be on what could be proposed there and how they would do it.
Okay.
Ashley, do you have comments?
At the last meeting, the board did start going over the FPAF Part 2, so you had identified some areas where there may be impacts that are moderate or large, and you had retained some additional outside consultants. So I believe they've been sent all of the relevant items for their different specialties, and hopefully, maybe by the March meeting, you'll have some comments back from those other entities. I did also, after the last meeting, I did send the application to a few agencies. You had asked me to send it to the fire department, the state police, the school district, and the ambulance corps. So I did send those out at the end of last month, and I have not seen anything. I don't believe Maureen's received anything from those agencies as well.
Thank you. At this point, planning board members, do you have comments? I'll actually start the other end. Lisa, do you have comments on this?
No.
I don't either.
Pat? Jeff?
Not at this time.
Jason?
Can I ask their traffic consultant a few questions?
Sure.
'Cause, yeah. So, can you explain just how did you come up with your traffic model and trip generation for the senior housing, specifically the senior housing? Because I have a hard time believing that out of 100 units, you're predicting maybe 50 trips in between morning and midday, and those same trips coming back.
Sure. Just for the record, Frank Felicilto, Creighton Manning Engineering. We prepared the traffic impact study for the project, and just to address the comment, we based everything on industry standards, Institute of Transportation Engineers, trip generation manual. It's a little bit of a tongue twister, but it's the industry standard publication that compiles a wide range of data on traffic generation for a number of uses, tens of uses, in fact. And these 3 uses that were classified here are based on that data. There's been about 11 editions of ITE's trip generation manual. They've updated it consistently for the past couple of decades, but basically what it does is it looks at a wide variety of data from engineers that contribute to the publication, and then they publish that data, so it's available for engineers like myself who are trying to inform the public and the board as to the generation. So senior adult housing in particular, I know, we're proposing 100 units, and the trip generation is around 33 trips in the peak period. The reason for that is you have to keep in mind that senior adult housing caters to a 55 and over. These are not likely to be people who are commuting during the peak hours. That isn't 33 trips per day, that is 33 trips in the peak hour only. So roughly 1 in every 3 units is going to produce a trip during the peak hour.
So what kind of demographic data does ITE use, and how do you specify Monroe as a area?
So the ITE gathers, in the case of the senior housing development, they looked at approximately 11 different similar senior housing developments throughout the country. They aggregate that data, they produce it. I can't speak to the specifics of each demographic, but they're looking at 55 and over, they're studying them during peak hours, they're counting the ins and outs, they're equating that to the number of units, and then they're providing us with a rate.
So these 11 senior housing institutes are nationwide and may or may not be in areas that are transit rich. Because also in the traffic impact study, there's a section about people who may or may not use public transit. And it talks about the rate of, or the frequency of the public transit, as well as the distance that people might be willing to go to ride the Orange County public transit bus.
Classification, IT provides subcategories.
Closer to the mic.
Sorry. Sophisticated. Sorry. So ITE, over the years, they've been getting a little bit more sophisticated. Back when I started this 20 years ago, they were on the 6th edition. They've the 11th now, and they're looking specifically at sites within very close proximity to transit. These 3 categories that we looked at, we elected, because it makes sense, to choose not near close transit. So there's no transit credit taken in those numbers, if that answers your question.
Sort of. So now we're going to make this a bit Monroe specific. So under our comprehensive plan, when I had it on my computer, it got moved on the document center. So if the town could figure that out, I would greatly appreciate it. The town of Monroe is defined as a bedroom community that has commuters, and there's a lot of people that are going to go to Harriman train station, or like myself to Ramsey train station, and we're gonna drive. And so, because you have a 55 and older, they're still working, they still need to commute. From our comprehensive plan, most of the people go out of Monroe to work. So, looking at the multifamily housing now, that's not age restricted. That's for someone like myself. You're looking at probably a standard family, 2 cars, 2 kids. How do you define out of 78 units looking at 28 trips during that rush peak? Because that doesn't seem right either.
And remember, it's 1 peak hour.
Right.
Think about the way families are. Not every single family is on the same time clock by any means. Some parents have kids, some don't. Some work from home, some don't. Some work 10 to 6, some work 8 to 5, some work 7 to 3. So yes, everyone could be leaving in the morning, but are they leaving all of them between 8 and 9? No. So that's why you have a fewer number of trips than you do units for the peak hour. I'm not trying to say that they're not going to go out to work. It's just that the data shows that they don't all go to work at the same time and they don't all return home at the same time. And you think about it, this isn't even in consideration of what has happened over the last 2 years with work
Right,
from
I
home.
get that. I'm
Right.
also assuming, everything's going to go back to the way it was because that's, for whatever ungodly reason, is the way people want it to be.
Yeah, no, there's no credit for that, I'll call it the COVID, disruption or however you want to classify it. But the data is very clear that a unit of multifamily housing does not produce a one-to-one relationship in the peak hours. It's just not happening. The data doesn't show it. And in that classification of land use, you have over 40 sample studies that are feeding into this.
And
this publication.
are those a bit more regionalized, or is it still nationwide?
It's nationwide. I'd have to look at the data specifically. New York does participate. There are several land uses in the ITE manual that are from New York. It all depends on the willingness of firms or nonprofits to submit the data.
Yeah, and that's more than fair. So I guess what I'm just saying is I would appreciate a more regionalized approach, a bit more localized approach, because there are significant differences between somewhere here and somewhere in western New York or somewhere in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska.
But counter to that is, if we're talking about middle of nowhere in Nebraska, it's even more car-centric there. I think what you're getting at is you think the trip should be higher.
Yes.
In a more rural atmosphere than Monroe, the likelihood of a car-based trip is even greater because there's even less of an alternative.
And that's the way it is here. You need a car to get around. You need a car to go to the grocery store. You can't hop on a subway or walk 5 minutes down the block.
Correct, but not everyone's doing that in the same hour. So they're doing it. They're doing it at the rate of multifamily trips. The low-rise, which are the less dense units on the plan,
Townhouses, right.
the cluster that's closer to the road, that rate is closer to 0.75 trips per unit. So that's closer to that one-to-one. The denser the multifamily, the fewer the trips per unit. It's just the way it is. It's what the data shows.
I think ultimately the question is, so let's say there are more trips. What is the implication? Well, the way traffic studies work, it then feeds into what are the levels of service at the intersections. And the nearest intersection,
Turnpike.
right, so, another way of asking a question, and maybe something that could be looked at, is what are the levels of service at those two intersections, and how many more trips would you have to kick it into a different level of service? That would require, like, let's say, a signal, a new turn lane. Are we 2 cars away from that, or are we 50 cars away from that?
So it's a great question. It's a great way to frame the question. We did do an analysis of that intersection. It operates at A's and B's during the course of those 4 study peak hours. Operating very acceptable levels of service in the New York metro area, I'll say, are anywhere from an A to B to C. Even a good D is considered acceptable depending on where you are. We can certainly do a quick sensitivity analysis and say you'd have to have 350 units of senior housing to change it from B to C.
I guess that's
And you could back into it that way. But I can tell you that if we're talking about 20 or 25 additional trips here, you're likely not to trigger a change in performance at that intersection. There's plenty of capacity there right now.
If you could get into, and again, related to the questions that Jason's asking or the comments he has, what would trigger a signal? Like, what do signal warrant analysis? What situation do you have to be at from a traffic analysis perspective to warrant a traffic signal? If you could explain that for everybody's benefit.
There are 9 warrants, or maybe even 10 now, but there's really 4 warrants that really drive most of the decisions, unless you have a unique situation near a school or something like that. There are 3 kind of volume-based warrants, and then there's a pedestrian warrant. Pedestrian warrant wouldn't apply here. There's just no pedestrian activity. Volume warrants look at an 8-hour period. Are the volumes of a certain level across 8 hours of the day? Not consecutive 8 hours, but 8 hours. Are they high enough over 4 hours and the threshold is higher? And then the peak hour warrant, which is rarely used except in the cases of like a stadium or some sort of big generator that all lets out at once. Are the volumes high enough during the peak hours? So you would need most likely to look at 8-hour and 4-hour volumes on Harriman Heights Road and show that they were having a difficulty getting on to Orange Turnpike. My gut says you would not even be close to warranting a signal.
It would require some other land use to potentially generate that. I don't know that this one is enough. Not that you're not going to generate traffic and additional vehicles during the peak hour at those intersections, but it's not going to warrant a signal. So then, as you said, does it warrant maybe a left turn lane or something alternative? And so I think that's the sensitivity analysis would get at that.
As of now, based on the development, there's no mitigation needed at that intersection, but like I said, I can run some numbers to back in and show you order of magnitude what you'd have to do to a development to trigger something.
That would be appreciated.
It's an academic exercise because it's not relevant to what we're proposing, but I'm happy to do it.
I'd like to see the sensitivity, just to, if it would warrant a turn lane.
And then related to this is, and maybe Ashley, have we been sending documentation to Orange County Department of Public Works? And do they have this traffic study? Or will they be getting it? Because they need to also approve any improvements, right, to the new driveways?
So we've been working with Orange County about a year on the driveway location themselves, and they also asked. Orange County has recently been taking the stance that if a development doesn't generate more than 100 trips in the peak hour, they don't need to see a traffic impact study. So all they requested for this was the trip generation table, because we're less than 100 trips. So they gave us a conceptual approval letter on January 18th, blessing the locations of the driveways, the site distance for those driveways, and they've essentially concurred with the trip generation, which is what we talked about at the beginning. So at this point, from a traffic impact standpoint, they're pretty much done. We obviously need a permit from them, so we'll be going back with detailed drawings at some point, but we've gotten to their sort of conceptual approval level.
Okay, and then just, I think everything that we've said, out of 178 total residential units, during a peak AM peak rush hour, you're thinking 50 total trips. That's about 1 to 3.5.
That's right. Yes. That's the AM generation.
And I'm assuming it's about the same going back. What goes out must come back, right?
Generally with these types of uses, yes, if you're going to leave in the morning. And again, you could see the difference with the senior adult. You know, you have 100 units, only 20 trips in the morning. This is not a commuting class of people. There are some commuters.
I was going to say, this is a defined, like, in our comprehensive plan as a commuting town. And I think there needs to be some sort of credit given to that.
Yeah, I mean, happy to do the same.
We're good?
For now.
Okay.
Thank you.
And those are the comments. I don't have any comments at this time. So, Ashley, anything else you want to add?
Just, I did refer, or I did send the traffic study to AKRF, so they'll have their comments, and then Jason, if you were, anyone wants to ask them to look at anything in particular, definitely don't hesitate to do so.
Thank you.
And then, have we heard from Frank Getchell or from anybody at this point?
Not at this point. I'll follow up with them.
Yeah, so we need to follow up, definitely, so we can keep this moving.
Except Frank hasn't gotten anything because we don't have, you're still working on the well reports.
Not yet. The Wizard of Oz, yes. So I think at this point, I feel comfortable with the SWIP that I could probably engage the hydrogeologist to start moving forward on, I think, the wells at this point. I think he can.
I think that would be
smart.
appropriate, sure.
Yeah, yeah, at this point, I think I was been waiting until now to start that, just in case anything needs to move, because we have to maintain 200-foot control radiuses because it's a public water supply system. So if I have to move a basin too much and the well's already drilled, that becomes a bit of an issue.
But I guess you're going to ask, can you drill a well in order to do the studies, right?
I'm sorry, say that again?
So I guess you'll have to drill a well to do the studies,
Oh,
correct?
absolutely. I just wanted to
So-
wait till this point to get the SWIP far enough along
Right,
to.
but the point is the board's still reviewing secret, so can the board consent to?
Just starting the well, well, I think so. I mean, in the end, you're sort of proceeding at your own risk.
Correct.
And I guess the other concern I would have as far as things moving around is there anything in that subsurface investigation between the rock and the fill that would warrant moving the buildings, or is it more just structurally how they're going to get constructed?
I'm going to defer to those actual specific consultants to give me that answer, but I would imagine that we could probably engineer something there that would function. But I will defer to them to confirm that.
But on the south side, I don't think there was anything noted geotechnically that would prevent or prohibit the well construction, especially because they're kind of to the northeast of the proposed senior center, or senior building, excuse me. And then the wells on the north.
The other side won't affect the location of wells if any of those buildings move.
Well, the way I understand the water system is it's going to be two separate.
Correct.
So basically on the south side, there's one water system with a number of wells, with the north side being on a different set of wells. I'm not sure there was clear indications of where the proposed wells are on the north side.
That's because we're trying to consider if any of those existing wells can be reused.
Okay.
I think there's one noted just to the right of Residence Road. That's an existing well that could potentially have capacity for this project. But once I engage the hydrogeologist to get started, we'll find out the well depth, we'll run a pump test, and we'll see if that, in fact, holds true. So I have to still decide on another drilled well location, though, for the northern side.
Right.
You need 2 locations?
At least.
Correct, for the northern side. 2 are shown for the southern side, but not yet for the northern side.
Okay. I don't think there's anything from our perspective stopping you from locating it and then moving forward with the hydrogeology.
At this point, yes.
Yeah. So once they're ready to move, then we have to connect them with.
Right, for the testing procedure.
Correct.
Yep.
Very
Okay.
good. I can get that started tomorrow.
Okay. Anything else, Sean?
Nope.
No? Everybody's good? All right, so we'll see you next meeting.
Very good. Appreciate it. Thank you very
Okay.
much for your time tonight.
Thank you. George, what'd you say? You may have been talking to someone else.
Now, I'm getting a whole bonfire ready.
All right, BJ's, why don't you come up? Good evening. At this time, Jeff Manson is going to step down as he is recused from review of this application. We need a bigger table. We have important projects.
We would
With important
definitely
projects, we need bigger tables.
We would need 2 tables if we had the full team, but we don't.
Yeah.
Tonight, we have Chirac Thakar. the project engineer. We have Jason Carr from Stantec, the environmental consultant on the BJ's fueling station. And we have Martin O'Boyle, who is BJ.
Sorry, the last gentleman's name? O'Boyle? Okay. Thank you.
I'm George Lithgow from Jacobowitz and Goodwitz.
Got you, George.
So briefly, Ken Worstead, the traffic consultant, is not here tonight. We heard last week that AKRF was still in the process.
Yes,
It probably would be better to discuss this in March
yes.
with a full go-around. Is there any objection if the traffic consultants exchange technical back and forth?
I don't. Is there any issue with that, Ashley, from your perspective?
It's really, the board's preference. So typically, your consultants write memos and comments to you as the board directly, and then they also get shared with the applicant. But it's
Through the board.
Yeah, usually the comments go to you directly. I mean, they could certainly, they typically will speak themselves about, maybe more minor issues or questions that come up. But the memos usually go to you with a copy to the applicant.
Really, it's just like a information kind of exchange, not
Right,
a substantive conclusion.
I think from my perspective, again, memos get addressed to us. AKRF will address their memos to us. You'll address the memos to us. But if there's a question or something that needs to be clarified in a memo and they want to speak directly, I think that's okay. Yeah, but otherwise, everything would come
That
through
was our
us
intent.
as part of the record.
So without further ado, I'll let Chirag.
Okay?
I have the PowerPoint. I think I'd emailed it, but I just brought it anyway. Second last, correct.
Closer to the
Sorry. Why don't we start with the color elevations, which is in that Arna BJ's folder. There you go. Okay. All of them, if you could open one by one, I'll just walk you through what they were formally submitted. So this is just an artist rendering. It's just illustrative of what the BJ's canopy, gas canopy, as well as the fast food would look like from the other side of Larkin. So if you're standing towards 17 side, looking towards BJ's, this is what you would see. It's just an artist rendering. It's to scale, but it's an illustration.
I'm trying to figure out where, because I thought that from Larkin it goes up.
Yeah, you're just on the edge of the curb. So
Okay.
if it's
Can you let me know also which
Oh,
photo
sure.
you're looking at?
We're looking at 01C.
Okay, thank you.
Can I approach you?
Sure.
And I could just show you where roughly. I mean, this is just a rendering, but
Okay.
it would be somewhere in here. If you're standing here, looking down.
Okay.
17's here. BJ's is here. The warehouse.
Right.
If you're somewhere here, this is what you would see.
Okay. I'd have to look at be out there topographically, because for some reason I think that's elevated. So we might be looking at this kind of flat, but in fact it might be slightly elevated above the road. Yeah.
Generally speaking, but this is the intent is to just
Sure.
give you the scale of
Right.
it and what the elevations would look like.
Right, and just for the record, what you were showing me was it would be approximately in the area, if you're going, let's say, from Walmart, Panera, Home Depot, and you're headed out that way toward Target, there before the left turn lane to go into the BJ's parking lot.
Correct.
Or driveway, it's somewhere in there as you're going in that direction.
Correct. It
Okay.
would be prior to the traffic light heading towards Target.
Correct.
If you could go to the next one.
I'm now opening up O2C JPEG.
So this is, again, an illustration from BJ's parking lot, the existing parking lot, looking towards, the far end of Larkin, if you will. So it's the direction, beyond the canopy of the tree would be 17 and Larkin. And this is generally what you would see. Again, it's an artist rendering.
Is that a Chick-fil-A logo
No,
on?
it's a Chipotle. It looks like a Chipotle.
It's just a tenant space.
I know.
We just don't know.
I'm only joking.
I'm okay with either, but we did talk about Chick-fil-A.
I know. Everybody wants Chick-fil-A, but that Chick-fil-A it's just, they have massive, circulation requirements. And,
Oh, I know. I don't know why that is, but
yeah,
I understand that.
It really needs a 3-4 acre pad nowadays.
It's amazing.
It's amazing, by the way. For a fast food restaurant that's closed on Sunday, it's staggering. It's just unbelievable. They've completely turned the whole fast food industry upside down.
I had Chick-fil-A way back when I was young in high school, when it used to be up at Paramus Park, because I grew up in Maywood, New Jersey. So it was up on the top. They used to have all the food court there. And it was just Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
It was not this, I don't understand this phenomenon.
It's unbelievable. And it's all they sell is chicken. So there is really, it's not the menu either. It's just that my kids eat it all the time. And when I ask them, they'll say, you don't understand. You won't understand. You got to eat it to understand it, I guess. But
I don't know. I think there's drugs in it or something. Something's going on. So I do have to point out, and you did say this is an artist rendering. Are those the light fixtures that are in the BJ's? I didn't think so. So you're not proposing to change them out?
No. They just, and then the trees are not that glorious either, but they look something similar. It's a rendering. This is just the way it goes. But the perspective is real, meaning the building height's real.
Okay.
The canopy is real. This is generally what you would see if you were in BJ's parking lot looking towards the fuel station.
So it's really giving us a sense of scale.
Scale,
Okay.
correct. It's proportional. That's what the intent is, to show you that what you would see generally.
Okay.
If we could go to the next one, please.
We are on 3C.
So this is again, you're not going to see it unless you can fly, but this is bird's eye view of what a building would look like, just to give you a perspective. It's, we present two-dimensional aerial plans all the time, like, color renderings. This gives a little bit more color about what you would see, just a layout of the site. It's the scale of the building, parking, circulation, landscaping, that sort of thing. So.
And based on what we said about the landscaping, having some green space, et cetera. Okay.
Correct. It's hard to see it in two-dimensional, so we just prepared a bird's eye view of it. So you can see there's an outdoor dining area, like a sitting area, and you have a sense of where that would be on a plan, how the circulation would work, where we would put landscaping. And again, none of this is set in stone. This is, we have flexibility to work with the board in terms of landscaping, lighting, that sort of thing, but just a reference. Thank you. Yep, next one.
Now we're on 4C.
Yep, so this is the view from Panera side. It's a bird's eye view. It just shows you, it's just a more zoomed out view, if you will. It shows the pond, the stormwater feature. Again, the pond is shown to be holding water. It's not going to be designed as such.
I was just going to say, I hope it's not going to hold water.
No, it's just, it would be hard to represent it if you not show water, because it would just feel like a grassed area. So full disclosure, it's not going to hold water. Water's going to come, do its thing, and it's going to drain out. So you won't see a reflection of a tree in that water unless you caught it at a certain hour of the day after the rain event. But it gives you the perspective of the fuel canopy, the 50-foot separation distance that we have, those 5 parking spaces towards Larkin. It just gives you a sense of scale. It really, that's the whole intent of it. And I think there is there's one car being fueled. I'm sorry, Mort, but it just shows you. It just shows there's sufficient room. That's the whole idea about this graphics. It shows that. It shows the fueling area where the fuel, the tanker would pull in. It shows that slip ramp area as well. And then on the far end of it, it shows the fast food restaurant again. Another thing to note in here is that there is plenty of room to comply with the landscaping requirement. As you can see, I just quickly counted these trees, and there are about 24 to 25 trees, depending upon how you place them. In existing condition, as we know, is mostly parking lot, and there's some island trees in there. I'm not sure if they even trigger the 6-inch caliper size, but be that may, we can definitely plant trees here. There's plenty of landscaped area that we can plant around. So if we could go to the next one, please, and that would be the last one.
We're on 05.
And so this is the same location as 04, but this is the ground shot, and it just gives you a perspective of what this stormwater feature would look like. And on the far end, you have the fueling station, and in the extreme background is the fast food. So
a couple of reactions. Just looking at it quickly, when we do detention basins or review detention basins, a lot of times we like the black, it looks like horse paddock fencing, but black, because sometimes it's, it's not white, and being where it is over time, I think it looks, kind of dingy. So if you do something that's black.
Not a problem, not a problem.
In general, I think when you look at the piers or the pillars for the canopy, it'd be nice to have something, either brick or stone base. I don't know what's at the BJ's right now, the building.
It's a metal frame canopy, so it's going to be, I'm not sure more. Do you have a sense of how they do it?
You have different
the canopy
styles or just
columns.
one style right now?
I believe we had, and it's one of the PowerPoints here, and it's in my pen drive here, but I think we had, at least I have a hard copy of it. Let me see if, yeah, so if once we exit out of this presentation, this was the last slide anyway, I can help you navigate to the elevations of the actual BJ's, the pictures that we had presented last time. That gives you a sense of what the columns look like.
Okay.
Okay, so unless the board has anything else to discuss on it, I think we can go there.
Okay.
This was the last slide.
Right. So now I'm
if we
going.
go back a folder, maybe one more folder back. And I think if we go to the 1228, yep, and there's a PowerPoint in there. Second file, there you go, thank you. And I think if the very last slide, or maybe the second to last slide, okay, there you go, those are the pictures. And this gives you a sense of what those gas columns look like. And it is a metal frame canopy, so. Yeah. The slide number 10 actually gives you the elevations as well. So if you slide up one more slide, there you go. That gives you these are the elevations that were previously presented.
So just, Ashley, we're looking at the PowerPoint from the last meeting.
From last month, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, where would you like us to navigate now?
If we can X out of this and go to the January folder one more time, please. If we can go to the second last, there you go. So that was one of the things that we had discussed. We heard the board loud and clear about concerns related to the extra impervious that would have been generated.
So, Ashley, we're looking at the file that has impervious calcs model. Okay, thank you.
So we, after the meeting, we, all of us grouped together, discussed this internally to figure out how the best way to approach a reduction in impervious, since the board has become concerned about added impervious as a result of the tank and the fueling loading area. What the plan proposes, or this exhibit shows, is the area of the tank, which is in brown color. It's 1,793 square feet. The sky blue color, which is the loading area where the fuel tanker would approach, is 3,320 square feet, for a total of 5,113 square feet. That's the net added impervious. And what we have done is the areas that are highlighted in purple color, if you sum them all up, they add up to 5,190 square feet. So it's about an even swap. And what we could do is those spaces that are highlighted in purple are the spaces that are most remote to the main BJ's Warehouse Club entrance. They actually are largely in front of the tire center. So the tire center that faces the front elevation. So they are least used spaces. I'd say barely anybody parks there. And they also happen to be next to a large landscaped area. So what we are proposing to do, just to alleviate the board's concern related to added impervious, is we would convert these parking spaces, which BJ's is clearly overparked, as the traffic engineer presented last time. We would swap out the impervious area. So we would take out these parking spaces and turn them into grassed area, and then it would then become a contiguous large island at that signalized traffic intersection. And this gives us an opportunity to plant better, landscape it better. It won't feel like it's cherry picked. It's remote from BJ's main entrance. Doesn't create any disruption to the traffic or the patrons that park closer to the door. And it would therefore be a net zero impervious gain as a result of the fuel tanks and the fuel loading area. So this was just an item of discussion. It was, I believe we ran it by BJ's. BJ's really has no concern. They really think this is quite doable. It makes sense. And it gives a contiguous area for landscaping.
I appreciate the effort in getting to sort of net no change in the impervious surface. But at the same time, it's really not addressing, from my perspective, it wasn't just about impervious, but it was also adding, from an aesthetic perspective and a functioning perspective, that tank area still. That's separate and apart from the parking area. So that's sort of my reaction. So again, while I appreciate the concept of the swap, I'm still questioning the location of that tank.
Right, so
I did want to go back to a particular rendering you had. I think it might have been this one. So this is 3C that we're looking at. And what I see here in this image is you could see the parking in here, and then it looks like this is impervious.
That's the tank, right?
So I thought that where the tank is, it's just a tank. I thought that there would be grass over there, but there's not. It has to be impervious as well.
Have to be on the mic.
Hi, I'm Jason Carr with Stantec Consulting. We're the fuel system engineer. The tank has manholes that need to be accessed for maintenance purposes and inspections per New York State DEC requirements. So those manholes and those frames are in a concrete over the top of the tanks.
Okay.
So it is impervious. Fill ports and other tank electronics.
Those can't be buried with risers up to the surface?
But the
brass
manhole
could be-
frames, the manhole frames, and, you know, there's a series of a half a dozen manholes running along the spine of the tank that need to be supported.
Right, but the point is, you know, they're 2-foot diameter manhole covers that could have risers so that the tank is set lower.
Largest ones are about 48 inches. And the tanks are 10-foot diameter. So you have a few feet on either side of them to support the frames and the covers. The manways are intended to support the pumps that are within the tanks, as well as the instrumentation and safety devices that are integral to the system.
Understand?
When do they do their deliveries? Or all times? Anytime?
I would say it would depend on the operations, but it would be, you know, throughout the day.
I'm still not seeing why we can't put the tanks under the pavement that's over by where they fuel. I'm still stuck there from my perspective, because it's really the way gas stations operate. And I know you'd have to deal with turning radii and you know, looking at the layout, but you know, every Cumberland, you know, Quick Check, Sunoco, all our gas stations have their tanks right there within the parking lot, and they fuel at different times of the day. So I see this bump out as unnecessary, from my perspective, unnecessary impervious. So I still really would like, you know, some discussion as to why it has to be designed this way. And is every single BJ's designed this way, where the tanks are not within, you know, the apron around the, you know, the fueling area?
Having worked on BJ's gas programs for about 20 years, I will say that the prototype is for a separate fueling area. Like Newburgh is a good example, where the tanks are in a separate area where the fuel delivery truck can park. The truck does not interfere with the customers in their one-way traffic flow. It's a safe way to keep the, you know, it's a large truck. It's maybe 40, 50 feet long. So
But isn't it the same as any other fueling place? Is it that much larger than a regular Quick Check or Sunoco or anybody else?
No, that's correct. And I think just for I guess the efficient traffic flow that BJ's has. So the customer experience at some of those other locations where they're buying groceries and I think the issue is the experience is different for the customers at those locations. On a more, do you want to speak to the?
And just a quick reminder, because we also talked about the fact that right now you have some parking, I think 4 parking spots that are in the 5 that, you know, rather have the ability to park the truck there, because given the nature, this isn't a Quick Check. It's not a place where you're going to buy coffee or other things. There's really no reason for them to park there, except for, I guess, whoever may be in the booth. You know, they would need a parking space. I don't think, you know, you're going to make them park across the street. But for the most part, I don't know how many people actually would use those parking spaces, and I don't recall seeing them at the Newburgh location. My recollection of the Newburgh location is that the location where they have the filling ports, I guess, whatever they're called, the manholes, is, so you have the canopy, and then you have your one-way flow area. You have, you know, the macadam area. Then you have, I believe, like a curb, and then some, I don't even know if there's landscaping, and it's right on the other side, alongside one of the drive aisles. But the way it is positioned or looks there, it barely looks like a space. It barely, my recollection, it doesn't look like as much as this does in terms of the amount of impervious that's introduced. It seems, my recollection, far less impervious. And I don't know why that is. If you recall, maybe you could let me know sort of that design, how it differs.
That one, those tanks are, they're in line end to end to end.
Right.
So it's a parking, it's wide enough, so it's 15 feet wide by about, 120 feet long for the fuel truck to drive and parallel park alongside those tanks for the fuel delivery.
Yeah, I'll have to check again. It didn't seem like it was 120 feet long, and the 15 feet sounds about accurate. It wasn't much wider than a parking space in sort of depth.
It's wide enough for
Them to come in
for,
and then-
to come in, and the tanks are 10-foot diameter. They're about 30 to 40 feet long, and they're in series.
And are they in
I'm just-
series underneath where he's?
I'm sorry?
Are they alongside or underneath where he's pulling in?
The fuel truck delivers on the passenger side, so he'll pull up and immediately to the, on the passenger side of the vehicle, within about 10 to 15 feet of where he parks is where you want to have a safe access to the fill.
Okay, I have to look at that. Was that in the BJ's photos in the presentation from January? Is that captured?
I don't know if there's a,
I know the aerials that we have don't show it yet because it's so new.
After the meeting in January, I sent you 3 photos of the filling point in Newburgh that I took.
Oh, did you? Do you have that, Noreen?
I might have it.
You have them? Did you send them directly to us, George? To me? You did?
He doesn't always copy me. Send them in January?
January at the end of the meeting around 9 o'clock, 9:30. I can resend them if you want.
Yeah, we could pick it up now. Where am I going? PJ's. If I got them, I didn't put them here in my,
Sent them to your Monroe.
Monroe email address? I have to send it to the Nelson.
It doesn't look like he would have sent.
Oh, did you send them to the Monroe email address? Yeah, I didn't get, well.
I wouldn't see that if it
You
only
wouldn't see
went-
that, right. No, I didn't get it then. Not that you didn't send it to the right email address, but I have issues with my email. I don't get that. I don't get those emails. Do you have them?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I'm just noticing that he sent others to the chairperson at
Oh, other
Monroe,
images?
right,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, interesting.
No. Well, this thing has to get synced somehow with that email address.
You might be able to forward that email address to your Nelson Pope.
IT
Oh,
help
that's a
you?
good idea. But I'm supposed to have both of them on this laptop, otherwise I'm carrying around another laptop. It's
Right, but if it forwards to it,
yeah,
it'll
but if
come
it
in
forwards, I just would want it to, yeah.
Should I send it to?
Yes, you can send it to me. Did you have my Nelson Pope?
can I approach? I've got,
Sure. Yeah, so it's interesting because if you look at the image, it looks like it's just part of almost, like a pedestrian curb type situation next to the flow of the parking area, and then it is just looking like almost like a fire lane adjacent to it. It didn't seem like it was 150 feet to me, and maybe it is. Okay.
the overall length of the canopy is about 160 feet.
Being re-
160, yeah. So it looks maybe it's not that much shorter.
Not on the mic, so it won't be in the minutes.
Okay. So just
an FYI.
the minutes can indicate that The
Talk me
photo of the BJ's tank location was being shown in a photograph.
Perfect.
I'm going to just pass this down. If anybody wants to look at it. All right. Well, that's one item. I mean, I don't want to take all the time up with that in particular. George, were you going to say something?
Well, Newburgh is a little bit different because that's an internal road, but it's not a circulation road.
It's definitely different.
And what this is doing is providing a grass buffer to separate the truck from
Right.
the
But
traffic on the circulation road.
So that's my whole concern, is that it's not like this internal circulation that's BJ's. It's the driveway that many people take to go over to Home Depot and then Walmart. It's like a main access road. If you're coming in from, what's the road? From which one? Larkin. Well, Larkin, but going out, not the 17 side, the other side.
County 5?
County 5. So if you're coming in from County 5,
Or 105, rather, right?
105,
Right.
and you're on Larkin, everybody that's coming in from that end, or a lot of people, will make the right there at the traffic light to go into the internal access drive. If they're going to Panera, if they're going to Home Depot, obviously BJ's. So at least that's my impression, that there's more traffic there. So it's not your typical BJ's, like that lane, that's only serving BJ's. Sure.
So the comment that you had related to that was, so this is a circulation that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. So,
Still be in the same direction of
Are-
circulation, there's no conflicting movement as a result of the truck with the automobile traffic.
are these regular contractors that provide the fuel service? Who fuels the tanks?
It would be a BJ's fuel supplier.
Okay, are there different ones, or tends to be the same individual, or?
Speaking just from experience, BJ's has a network of relationships with local fuel suppliers that they use on a frequent basis.
Okay.
I've done this.
Sure.
So, not that strictly this apply here, but usually the route is done by the same person or same group of people, 2 or 3 delivery guys, because they all run the same route, generally. Meaning, when the company has 10 drivers, 4 are doing this route and 4 are doing this route. Not that they can't do other routes, but generally they hold the routes. So that's my experience.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to present this evening?
Sorry.
That's all
Like
right.
musical chairs.
Yeah,
You've got to get
musical
more of
chair.
the.
Who's in the hot seat?
You need to get more mics.
Yeah, so the idea was to discuss this. We
Sure.
wanted to make sure that we heard you loud and clear, and we were trying to find a solution that really works from operational point of view, from environmental point of view. And I think the swapping of impervious is a great idea, just personally speaking.
Yeah, I appreciate the trying not to increase the impervious
Correct.
area.
So it's the same lot, it's the same area. It's not like you're trying to swap impervious 2 miles away. It's
Right.
generally the same area.
Just on that, I just want to make it clear that although, it does improve or provide for pervious area, it doesn't give you any stormwater credit on the design of the pad site.
Of course.
Yeah.
No, we won't be looking for that.
Yeah, okay.
Now, we do our burden as if this doesn't exist.
Right.
The swap doesn't exist. No, that's perfectly fine.
So if you don't have anything additional to present, then we'll go through Sean's comments, if you had any, and then Ashley, I don't know if you had any, and then we could kind of talk about where we are in the process.
Sure. So really the only thing I have to add was Pat had a suggestion at the last meeting to try to move it to the opposite side, or, try to move the fueling station to the opposite side of the drive, or the access aisle, from the light through towards Home Depot. So I didn't see that alternative provided, although Stantec had provided a kind of a letter stating the challenges with that. Some of the just kind of feedback I had was, I know you stated that you would have to open up the road for that access aisle for the installation as well as maintenance. One thing I offered was potentially a casing pipe to avoid digging it up for maintenance. Another item was, stating that there was utilities in the way. The only thing I saw was drainage, which potentially is going to be modified anyway due to the existing drainage concern on the site. So I just wanted to offer that. And then security, it's my understanding that there's this state-of-the-art security, tank monitoring that, I didn't really see a huge change from one side of the access aisle to the other for the, monitoring it by the, fueling attendant.
I speak to a couple,
Sure. Yep.
couple of them. So without getting into the weeds of how fuel systems are constructed, the longer the distance, the longer the piping runs. The piping needs to be sloped continuously for various reasons. One is the manufacturer of the equipment. So there's limitations on how deep you could put certain things. I don't have the details on exactly the diameter of some of the storm drains, but I think that there are some existing structures that, improvements are going to be made, but I think there's other key infrastructure that is going to be between the gas station and where the proposed tanks may fit.
It's also, just one more thing, if I can interject. I think when the comment is made about the pitch of the pipe, the fuel pipe, it's actually pitched towards the tank.
Towards the tank, of course, right.
So it's bucking the grade,
It's the pump's working against it,
Correct.
but it's so that when the pump shuts off, it's coming back to the tank, right?
So it bucks the grade, if you will. It's not
Sure.
in the direction, because BJ's.
The grade on site, yeah.
BJ's site is higher than the pad site, so.
Right, right. The gas station's lower than where the tanks would be, yeah.
So that would create a much longer piping run.
Oh, just make sure you're talking to the mic that's turned red.
Turned it off.
On the front, George?
Down on the bottom, there's a line over the microphone.
Got it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Now, so as the piping lengths get longer, everything gets deeper.
Sure.
And there are some limitations that need to be considered. And again, the clearances between utilities, pipes, I just don't know that it's feasible. I think some of the other geometry issues, the fuel delivery, the conceptual locations are also in the main drive aisle to the entrance to the BJ's Club, which would also.
Yeah, I can speak to that if you want. Is there a way we can go to the aerial view so maybe I can try to explain that?
So, and just the last thing, and I'll let you take over, is I think that the security concern has to do with the line of sight from the fuel delivery procedure being offloaded, when they're offloading across the street and away that far from the BJ's attendants that are working at the gas system, or at the gas station, with traffic and whatever else is being conducted on the main roadway. You could have an obstructed view, and you want to have a line of sight, a line of communication during a fuel delivery or fuel transfer operation. There also are some mature trees that exist in those well, we're going to see some of them here on the drive-through, that would also create some potential obstructions visually and with the root structures that are already existing, so those may have to be removed. Just some considerations.
No,
that's all.
that's one thing I was unaware of is that the fueling lines had to be back pitched towards the tank, so.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And if we an aerial view versus a street view, and maybe I think I can address the comment. So can I approach the screen? It might be easier for me to
Yes.
just explain. So conceptually,
I don't think it's gonna pick it up. Can we carry that mic, George, or no? I was gonna say, it's not gonna go very far.
What about,
Yeah, just turn yours
Have
around,
this-
Jason, maybe. There we go.
or this one, I don't know.
I think that's.
Talk loud.
Okay.
As long as it's
Talk
on
loud.
red.
I'm sorry. So the idea was, at least the concept last time we discussed, was to put the fuel tanks somewhere on the other side. We didn't really quite figure out exactly where, but that was generally the comment. So these spaces are about 18 feet deep. Maybe construction tolerance, maybe it's 19 feet deep, let's just say. So space to space is about 30.
Closer to the mic, you just want.
Sorry. If I get there, I'm not going to be able to. I'll talk loud, like really loud. Okay.
It's fine, just, it has to be on the mic, otherwise I can't get it in minutes.
Okay. Okay now? Okay. So the idea was to have a tank that's 30 feet. I'm sorry, but I just.
Yeah, no, we're good.
So these are the drive aisles that actually feed the BJ's front entrance. So if you zoom out slightly, you will see this corner is really the most critical corner from a parking lot point of view. That's where the main entrance is. So if we were to do this, let's just say in this area. So we have 36 plus, give or take, 8 feet of island. So we have 45 feet. I'm just rounding some numbers here. 45 feet, that area is also now, this aisle is also being used by the patrons, and you can see more cars here than anywhere else. So if a truck were to come in, you would have to have fuel tanks here. It spins and it goes in like that. It's not completely out of that stop. Traffic is going. Truck is coming. About 45 feet. So let's just say we cut the island here. From my perspective, it starts to intermingle with the patron traffic. Higher density happening more. This was an afterthought that came to me.
Okay.
I'm
it's
sorry,
okay.
I don't.
No,
my
it's
back
okay. I
facing
know.
the-
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, just disrespectful.
We understand.
but-
It's our limitations here, so don't feel like
So
you're
that
being
was
rude.
so that was one of the concerns that also plays into this.
Right.
It's just there's going to be too much weaving going on internally
Mm-hmm.
just to move the tank on the other side. So other than the reasons that the Stantec offered, environmental, the other thing is that every time you add linear feet of fuel pipe, it's just not a good idea because that means that you have more probability of leaks happening. Now, the utilities that are in the road, Sean's correct, there's a drainage pipe and inlets and that sort of thing in there. There's a water main in there. That utility. to keep just for that particular. Not that it's never done.
That's why I suggested in a steel casing so that it would be also protected from other excavations, but yeah.
Well, and that's actually, is there a distance that has to be maintained between the fuel tank and a water main line?
For fuel? I guess I've never experienced before, so I guess I'm not that familiar with it.
In New York State?
There's no
Thank
specific.
you. Thank you. No worries.
There's no specific code per se, but there are manufacturers' setback requirements, and let's just call them best management practices.
What are those?
I mean, it's usually a couple pipe diameters away, and so if you have a 3-inch pipe.
The recommended vertical separation between a sewer main and a water main is 18 inches, so, yeah.
But in this case, the whole intent of that, and Sean knows very well, is avoid cross-contamination.
Right.
So if you can think that the water requirement, the standards generally are that you keep yourself 18 inches, and you preferably have sewer at the bottom and water on the top. So even if the sewer leaked, it's really not contaminating the water.
Right.
Although the pipes could be, water lines are mostly ductile iron pipes, so they're well sealed. But there's still precautionary standard just to have that 18 inches. Last thing we want to do is a fuel tank line crossing over
Understood.
over a portable water line.
Right.
So that was one of the concerns too.
Yeah, no, I definitely, I totally understand the challenges of having to run the lines across the driveway with utilities, the maneuvering that would have to be done to create a location for them to fuel. I'm finding less of a challenge within
which is pointing more towards why can't you put it closer to the fuel island, yeah.
All right, so I'm like I said, I'm still there, but
So there's one more thing that I should have touched base on.
okay.
Sorry. So the plan that we have also has that O&R easement going through it.
Want me to bring up the site plan?
Sure, please, yeah. And we can pick anything if it's,
Back to yours.
yeah, I think this is
You'll
the
find
town
us-
file, yes, please.
Find yours quicker. Here we go.
CP20,
That's
no,
per-
that one was the impervious model. If we go back one folder, please. The 1228 one.
Okay, so it's not a new,
It's in the last file,
okay.
and I'm hoping that's where, oh, that doesn't show the easement. Maybe one prior to it. This doesn't show it, but there is a plan set in this folder, but if I may approach one more time.
Sure.
So the easement runs. Here. Red line.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. So with regard, I don't know if you heard that, Ashley. So we're talking about the utility line easement that kind of goes diagonally through the site, almost parallel. Well, it goes through the bioretention area and then the parking spaces. So actually, that raises a question. Are you allowed to do the other improvements? Have you touched base with O&R as far as what's allowed to occur there? I mean, it goes through the whole.
Yes, we have. Pat Patrick Smith, who is with the applicant, and myself, we met with ONR out in the field, I'd say August of last year, August, September, before we were started heavy on concept plan and the plans. And we showed them the plan. This plan was presented to them.
Okay.
I mean, of course, we have to go through their approval standards and that sort of thing, but, they have specifics on what kind of landscaping you can put in. They don't want, oak trees that could go 50 feet,
Right.
so that sort of thing is there. But yes, we have touched base with them.
Okay. But they weren't presented with the idea of a tank being there per se?
No, but their standards are fairly straightforward, meaning they want anything that happens within their easement is to be within their protocol. Anything that happens has to be, they want flexibility to go over their easement unimpeded.
What is, with regard to the easement, what is the width on either side of that line?
I would say it shows up approximately 50 feet, that dimension. See how it coincides with that line? I'm estimating.
50 feet on either side, so 100 feet total?
No.
Oh, a total of 50?
I think it's 135
Oh.
tall, but this is the line. This is the electric line right
Oh,
there.
you have a dimension right there, 135. See, right?
The total.
So that's their easement area?
Correct.
135, okay.
But 50 feet on this side, on our side of the property.
Okay. Sean, so we kind of touched upon,
On all the notes that I had.
Okay.
Yeah.
let me ask, Ashley, do you have any comments at this point?
Just a few. We looked at that impervious area swap exhibit earlier, so just a note that, because you are asking for, elimination of parking and a parking reduction, so to make sure the spaces that you're proposing to remove are counted in that. I don't believe they were counted in the original 68 that were gonna be removed, so that study will have to be, updated for the traffic engineer.
Yes,
I
we've
did,
done, I'm sorry.
look at, George provided an EAF narrative, which was helpful to kind of summarize, the project as they think it stands. It wasn't clear to me, George, if that was supposed to be written, were you writing that as if it was something the planning board was gonna adopt? Because I think at the end, it made it sound like the planning board was actually making a determination, so it seemed like you were trying to write it from the planning board's perspective, perhaps. I just wanted to see what the intent was behind that.
That was Marissa's, and she unfortunately lost power.
I'm sorry, if you could speak a little louder into the mic.
He's got his, he has his mask on, and
Not
he said
anymore.
Marissa had written it, and so he's
Okay.
not sure.
Marissa's been working on that. She lost power
Okay, I
with
can
the,
touch, sure, I
storm,
can touch
so
base with her.
We'll touch base with
Um,
you guys and work that out.
And basically, yeah, we had previously discussed, doing some type of consistency analysis for seeker. I went through the findings from the original project, and I noted there's some things in there as far as maximum impervious coverage, those limits, and other specific landscaping requirements and architectural requirements as well. Styles that the findings wanted considered as mitigation. So to look and pull what's, relevant from those findings, and then any further seeker conditions that there might have been from the further site plan amendments. But that's really where the status is, I guess, procedurally, where we're gonna get, I guess, some type of consistency analysis from the applicant, and we need to see how this fits in with that prior environmental review.
We're working on that.
So they're working on it.
Understand.
Okay. Where are we process-wise as far as circulation, seeker?
You did circulate, and you assumed lead agency status at the last meeting, January 13th.
So I guess we still need some additional information, especially with regard to consistency with whatever finding statement was adopted.
And the traffic is being reviewed
Traffic
by
being reviewed.
ARF as well. we
Right.
discussed.
Right.
The consistency is going to be fairly general because there has been the passage of time. Many of the consistency points are things that are being addressed here because they were very general. The process started before 1997, continued forward. There was some level of consistency analysis when the BJ's itself was approved in 2001. So we'll try to put those points together, but it's, with rare exemptions, it's not a numerical determination. It's, did you provide for drainage? Did you provide for parking? Did you consider the architectural appearance?
Almost qualitative.
Yeah, and some, I mean, there might be, I think, a little bit of both, because things like, yeah, we're still within the maximum 65 impervious coverage. That's obviously going to be a numerical value. I think certain things will be numerical, but I understand that many may not be.
That is the primary example of numerical, the coverage, and we are within it. And that one we can do relatively easily. It's putting all the things together and connecting the dots more or less to show we're still proceeding along the same path.
Exactly, I understand. I mean, there was the project overall, the development's been around for, the study's been going on for years, so there's a lot of different things I get to gather from that. There was, I'm trying to find it now, I believe you received a letter from the village of or the town of Woodbury.
Right.
So I don't know, George, whether I think you should have received that as well. There was a comment, I think they were sent the circulation, and then in response to that, they wrote this letter. It says that Woodbury Town Councilman, who used to serve on the Monroe Planning Board, recalled this application. It was before him at that time. And he told the Woodbury Town Board that the Monroe Planning Board had denied the application because the aquifer runs under the location where the fuel facility was proposed. Does this sound familiar?
Yes, I did see the letter.
Okay. Sure. So if you could, just maybe
what we
it doesn't
plan
have
to
be
do
now,
is
but at some point
discuss it
touch on that
Yes.
that letter as well.
Okay. Can we return to the subject of the tanks one more time?
Sure.
As I listened to what you said and what we were talking about, the aesthetics of the area around the tank seems to be the concern.
Well, it's a combination of the aesthetics. It's the fact that you have this pull-off that's right next to two access drives, one coming out for the BJ's, the other one going in for either in or out for the fast food. It's the fact that it's along the main drive. It is partly aesthetic because now we're adding a lot of additional impervious, where if you had a regular gas station, the tanks would be right there, in the apron around, the fueling area. So it's a combination of things, and it doesn't feel like the best place for it. And so, if from your perspective, you don't really want it within the gas area that it's serving, within that impervious area, what other options are there?
That's the question, and the answer is the one that's chosen would be adequate, and the question is, what can we do to make it more adequate? So you're concerned about traffic circulation, the traffic circulation road, and we think we can address that with the traffic consultant. The question of the aesthetics, we think we could address by the landscaping plan and enhancing the landscaping.
I don't think it's going to be enhanced. I think you have a big macadam area, because regardless of the rendering, this is going to be a pavement. So you're going to have, kind of pavement to pavement to pavement, whereas you could have landscaping there instead. So I don't think the aesthetics are going to be improved, or can be improved even with the addition of landscaping.
But overall, when you look at Harriman Business Park, we will be improving the aesthetics of the entrance. We will be improving the aesthetics of the,
What do you mean improving the aesthetics of the entrance?
as the plan Chirag developed shows, the landscaping will replace the islands immediately next to the entrance.
Bioretention area?
No, sorry, the entrance to the west. If you go out to the traffic signal, when you're coming in on your shortcut, instead of seeing through into the BJ's parking lot, you'll see trees, you'll see shrubbery, you'll see landscaping, and you'll see enhanced islands. The area that's in purple on the circular, what's it called?
I think what George's talking about is this exhibit.
Right.
All right, I'm gonna bring that up.
Pervious calculations.
I do have one thing that I'd like to point out. It's hard to articulate everything in a letter about how to say why it's complicated of putting the tanks across the street. The other thing with modern gas stations, and I say modern, newer gas stations, I think it's the desire of a lot of gas station builders or engineers or owners to have the tanks in a safe area. Several years ago, the EPA and the New York State DEC adopted the ABC operator requirements, which require, these are safety procedures for underground fuel tanks. Tanks have to be inspected daily, weekly, monthly as part of a certain protocol. So putting underground storage tanks in the middle of a traffic pattern that you open up manholes, it's not a safe place for employees. And BJ's has ABC trained operators. It's a regulation. It's a New York State DEC regulation. So putting the tanks in the middle of a exit path or an entrance to a gas pump where a customer is going to be focusing on getting gas while an employee is trying to inspect, the underground tanks periodically. It creates a safety concern, also having.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think why I have issues with these arguments is that every other gas station has them in the pavement area. So that's where I'm having difficulty seeing how this is unique compared to other gas stations.
I want to let Mr. O'Boyle speak to that.
Sure.
Because BJ's, as we've stated, is a membership club. It operates in a certain manner. They have 200 locations. They have worked through these processes, so they work for their membership. And it's an important point because it is not like a gas station. It's different.
Let me ask you this. Is there any gas station that has the tanks in the pavement that's associated around the fuel?
Being new with BJ's, I can't represent that every gas station is built this way. We've been operating gas stations in New York and in our operational area for over 20 years, so this has been an evolving way of figuring out what the best practices are to have a safe and efficient fueling experience for our members. So having, BJ's is, as you know, is membership based. So it's different from normal gas stations in that capacity. Further, it's different in that we generally have bigger sites. Regular gas stations are on tighter, smaller sites where they need to absolutely have their refueling in that area. They don't have a choice. I would imagine if they did have a choice, they would move to something more like what we like to do, where we keep everything separate. If you're stuck in the parking area, put it here, what you're going to experience is backups. You're going to take away queuing space. You're going to make movements through the site much more difficult for those ingress, those cars coming into the site, which could cause backups out onto the road. Whereas here, you have a truck pulling in a single direction, unloading, pulling out in a single direction, no conflicting movements. The only way just coming back into traffic, and you can see it's not a hard turn. It gets to come out softly, so it doesn't have to start at such a slow speed and make a 90-degree turn slowly around there. It can come out faster, more in line with the traffic. So it's much safer. It's a much more efficient way of doing it. Again, it's not like a typical gas station. At the bigger sites that we typically operate from, we're operating out of 10, 15-acre sites where they're an acre or so. My guess is typical gas stations would operate like this, keep the truck out of the way of their patrons so that they can get in and out of the stations.
So I don't think this is a big site if we look at the area that's devoted to the gas station. And I'm just giving you counterpoints. I don't see how the membership aspect of this is relevant to whether it can go within the apron or not. I don't know that that's particularly relevant. You can go to gas stations like Sheetz, which have this kind of, not this kind of arrangement, but this length of a gas station. I mean, up in our area, we don't customarily see these longer, fueling islands and fueling facilities. But there are plenty of places like Sheetz, especially, and others when you get further south that have this many pumps. And I don't know that they're putting the tanks anywhere other than somewhere around the periphery of the pavement area. And that's a question. And I would like to know if there are any BJ's facilities that do have the tanks in the tarmac, because I think it's probably just a function of size. I don't know that it's a question if they're always separated. It's a question. So I still, again, if it wasn't for the fact that all gas stations, and frankly, you have more space to maneuver on here than from my perspective, than a typical gas station that you would see in Monroe. So I just, I still haven't let go of the fact that we need to accommodate the location of the tanks in this manner. I'd like to research it a little bit more, just to feel, that this is, the way that they're all built, or that this, and I think the one item that I heard tonight where I feel that, that may be the limitation is the O&R easement. That was the one limit I've heard, because honestly, the other limitations, if I look at all the other gas stations, or I look at bigger gas stations, they can accommodate it in the pavement around the facility. So, and I know that they might have two-way traffic and other things, but that's, like I said, the one limitation that I would want to explore is the fact that if it's an O&R easement, does that limit them from putting the fuel tanks there?
Right. And even, let's say it doesn't, being membership-based, we aren't like a regular gas station. People pay to use these gas stations, so they want a more efficient operation. They don't want to be waiting there. They get cheaper gas for buying the membership. So we don't operate them as typical. When you go to any place where you have a membership, if you go to a country club as opposed to a public golf club, I don't know if anybody plays golf, I rarely do, but if you go to that, you're going to get better service at a private club. That's the service that we try to provide for our members. This is what we've come up with over the last 20 years of developing these stations, as it makes the most sense. It's the safest and most out of the fuel area, out of the way where the movement structure, one way sitting there. Blocking traffic, and because the ingress point is coming off that corner, if you have somebody coming off of that corner, turning right off of Larkin and into that main road there, and there's a backup there, if you have an aggressive driver, that could cause a dangerous situation. So what's proven safe for us is to get people in, get them queuing within the site and off of the main roads, and in and out of the site as quickly as possible. And that's just our tried and true.
Jason, did you want to say anything?
No, I mean, you sort of addressed most of it. I'm just, to your point of efficiency, I've spent more time than I feel like any human being should at a Newburgh gas station. And I've learned that despite, the best efforts to make it the most efficient, I have pictures and video of people still lining up and queuing next to an empty and open, functional gas station. And so, the efficiency argument, it looks good on paper, but it doesn't really work out in practice.
Yeah, I actually experienced, because I have fueled up several times now at that Newburgh station, and I've seen people get in line behind other people when their other fuel.
Exactly. And so
fuel pumps
so
open.
that's why, like, this efficiency argument, it sounds nice, and it pens out on paper really nicely. But when you actually go and experience and watch the operation, like, you see that.
I've been there and watched that operation. There are people who queue up. The approximate time they spend in that queue is 3 minutes.
Let me tell you a problem with the queues.
Well, no.
I truly mean this. The BJ card swipe at the Newburgh is some of those swipes with the laser, they do not read the card well. And I have spent time trying to get my BJ's card to swipe underneath the laser, just so you know. I truly am, I'm not saying this in jest.
We'll get Mort to take care of that. He's taking notes. It'll be fixed tomorrow. We'll send you a special card.
I had to ask someone that was fueling next to me, like, what am I doing wrong? I cannot get this thing. And we had to play with you may have had a perfect experience. 2 times now I've had issues trying to swipe that card.
I've just sat in the parking lot behind and watched. So, full disclosure, I am not a BJ's member.
The question I was going to ask is, would it be better experience if there was a tanker truck in the middle trying to refuel it?
The difference between the Newburgh situation here you have the space. In Newburgh, you don't. You have a median that's kind of separates out.
Have you ever traveled across the Beacon-Newburgh Bridge and seen a guy with a truck? After you spend 10 minutes getting to that point, everybody goes, because everybody's got to look at that truck. When you see when this happens, when there's a truck in the middle of the parking area and you're looking for your, the first available spot, you're looking at this, you're looking at that.
It's a highway.
You know what? If there's a car, it's no different than again, if you go to the Quick Check. I happen to go to the Quick Check a lot. If you go to the Quick Check, if the truck is there, the truck is there, and people just go around or to the side. It doesn't obstruct them. In fact, there's parking there that's unnecessary, so he tends to be toward the parking side, just like you have the extra parking there. If you didn't have that, would they be able to put a little bit more macadam over there to be able to accommodate it? And the queuing, yes, there were a couple people that were queued. I don't know why, but there's still plenty of space, to maneuver around in that BJ's parking lot. I was there at it was before a meeting, so I was there around 7.
What they're trying to figure it's like when you go to when you go to a grocery store, you see 20 stalls, aisles, you figure, okay, why do you need all those? You go at 2 o'clock on a Saturday, you find out.
Well, look, another limitation is that we're trying to put 2 uses here. So, the argument as far as not being able to facilitate putting it in a different location is in part because we're also trying to fit a little restaurant, a fast food restaurant. So, we could make that argument too. But I don't necessarily want to not have the fast food restaurant there. But I would like to figure out a way to still evaluate whether the tank, turnoff needs to be in that location.
The operational requirement of BJ's. You're concerned, I heard 3 concerns. One is aesthetics, one is impervious surface, and one is
traffic maneuvering.
Traffic circulation.
Yes, and I will also say experience is that, and that's why I was asking the question about regular fuel, who services these sites. Because I know plenty of truck drivers where they will just go in where they go in because they happen to have come from a particular direction. At least in this instance, I think if you sign it, they have to come off they're probably coming off of the thruway or 17. from that end. So you could probably get them going in that direction. They're not going to probably coming from the 105 side.
I think they have to come from that direction because they have to fill from the passenger side. So you can't come in, and you can't come in on the one side and pull in with the driver's side by the tanks.
Right.
You'd have to come in and do a U-turn, and obviously U-turn is not a movement you can make there. So you have to come in off of the entryway by Panera, come
Right.
in and pull in. So you're staying all within, as Chirag pointed out earlier, you're staying all within the same traffic pattern. You're not crossing it as if if you move them across the road, now you have a truck making a left-hand turn, and then pushing that truck down towards to the breezeway, toward the main entryway into the store in order for. That's not really a feasible way to have a truck running through there.
Let me, because I obviously have strong opinions about it, but Pat, do you have anything, or Lisa, do you have anything to say or add, or?
Ladies first.
Well, thank you. I've just been listening. Thank you. It's been interesting.
still acceptable
But I don't
these
have
days.
anything else to add.
Thank you.
I've been trying to think of all sorts of things you could do. I think you've basically answered it, especially with the tanks on the other side. That's not feasible with makeup. But the one thing I was thinking, and I hate to even mention this based upon all the problems I caused by asking the last question, but you see where the canopy is. If you move the canopy further north, but far enough away from the easement, I don't know if that's possible. Not possible.
The easement, and Chirag could speak to this more knowledgeably, but I believe that the canopy sits almost right on the easement line.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Get it.
You're trying to keep the structure out of the easement. They didn't want the structure in the easement. Okay. Okay.
I think for the most part, they don't want any sort of improvements that they can't run
Right.
over with a crane pretty quickly and easily.
Yeah.
They're liability shy.
They also changed a lot after 9/11.
Yes. My sense of meeting with them was that
I know.
But if they have an easement, they want, sorry, if they have an easement.
We're going to get 2 of these mics next time. We got to have 2 mics, George.
Yeah, we just have a big crowd today. So my sense from speaking with them was that they were nice. They were out there to help us.
Yes.
They were not trying to block us. But the sense that I got from them was that they want to have unimpeded access to their easement. Because when something goes wrong, and these are high tension lines, these are not the lines that serve in
Right.
my house. So if something goes down with these lines, it's actually taking out sections of New York.
Right.
And they can't have issues that then has to go, an additional hurdle to go over to approach their infrastructure. So anything that they want to bring in heavy equipment, they want to bring in whatever they need to bring in to approach these poles, which are not standard poles. They're high
Right.
capacity poles. They need, I'm sure they need
Right.
big
They're high
cranes and-
voltage distribution
Yeah,
poles.
so their concern, for instance, related to the bioretention area was they said, fine, bioretention area theoretically sounds okay to us, but it cannot be wet. These are the things that we're talking about. Because they don't want to have a situation when it rained and the thing was wet and now their truck can't get into it. 4 feet was not an issue for them. The wetness was the problem for them. So things like that. So they were never going to allow a gas canopy in their easement because that would
Right.
mean that they would have to take down a canopy
Yeah.
to get to work in that area.
Understood.
So if you actually go around into the Walmart parking lot or Home Depot parking lot, you'll see that mostly it's kept clear. They do allow vegetation. They understand that they can't not have vegetation.
Does that bioretention facility have to be sized that way?
Well, in terms of a shape you're talking about, the size.
Or the
itself.
size of it? Again, I'm just trying to figure out an alternative location for that for that delivery of the fuel. And so I was just curious whether that, but that's also in the that's still in the easement area.
Yeah,
anyway,
this whole
right?
thing is in the
Yeah.
easement area, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Because I think I had said at one of the meetings, if that restaurant wasn't there and if you turned the facility so that it was more parallel to the internal drive, and you didn't have it, you would have a lot more room to work with, where you wouldn't have to be pulling off from that internal drive to have the tank.
But if I recollect, I'm sorry I interrupted you. I think if I recollect last time Pat Smith was here, who represents RD, the BJ's gas station is not generating any revenue for RD. Like it's the incentive for them to stay in this store is basically what it shakes down to. And their lease is up, their 20 years lease is up or going to be up. So I'm slightly over my skis here. I'm talking business as being a civil engineer, but this is what I heard last time.
Okay.
And so that pad site is what really fuels financially the gas station, which then has an incentive for BJ's to stay in their lease, continue to occupy the store.
Okay.
So that's what he said, but in March, when Pat's here, he'll be here.
Okay.
We can have it verified, but that's what I heard last time.
So I think we still need to get the consistency information. We need to have AQRF look at the traffic report, so that's still there. So, we have between now and next month to do sort of the final look of this tank area. And I would like to know if any other facilities have the tanks within the pad around the fueling stations in New York. Or New Jersey, I guess it doesn't matter. I say New York because I don't know if the regulations are different in New Jersey.
No, I could speak to this because I've worked on the engineering plans for several of the BJ's projects throughout New York, and there are some early generation stores, Olean, New York, Albany, New York, again, very early generation gas stations, 2001, 2002, where they were existing parking lots where the gas station was put in, and that's just the way they were done. Regulations were different then. It's not that the regulations prohibit you from doing that. Operations have changed in response to the regulations. I was talking about the more frequent inspections and maintenance activities and the safety of employees. So that's why we've gone with this regime.
If this is of any value. So I am actually working on a design of a similar warehouse store in New Jersey that has their prototype gas, and they have identical scenario. Not this particular scenario, but the fuel truck and the passenger, the patrons don't intermingle. And they have also one-way circulation. So I think what Mort was saying is correct. This is ideal from a safety point of view, from their operational point of view. And I'm not saying BJ's is the only company that's doing this, because I'm intimately involved with the project in Jersey, North Jersey actually, similar warehouse store and with fuel, and they have similar situation like in Newburgh where the delivery truck comes in, but it doesn't go over to the canopy side where fueling is happening by patrons. It's staying on the drive, on the other drive. So it's distinct and separate from the operational side. But I think we can talk about the circulation. My opinion, and clearly from BJ's opinion, the circulation is not an issue, but I'm not a traffic engineer, so maybe we'll...
Right, because that was the other, that in doing the one-way, you're forcing them out into that drive aisle, which is, a little bit more heavily trafficked than your typical BJ's drive aisle. Because we talked about that previously, the one-way circulation, not being able to go around again if you had to.
That's correct.
And I don't know if you observed anyone. I didn't have enough time to pay attention to see if someone was trying to come back against the one-way to fuel. You know how some cars will come through and then they want to be on the other side? Because it says all over the place that you can fuel from either side, even if your tank is not next to, the fuel dispenser. But people just are accustomed to doing that, so.
Yeah, right, and so I saw most people they decided to queue in line. They okay, I'll wait here. And that goes again to the efficiency argument here, is that it works out great on paper, it sounds great, but it just doesn't work out in reality all the time.
Well, I don't know that it necessarily goes against the efficiency argument. If people choose to wait in line and there's an empty pump there, it's the facility itself is efficient. If those people choose to wait in line,
Right,
they choose
but they
not
create
to be
an
efficient.
inefficiency. They create that inefficiency.
Well, they choose the inefficiency. We have created
yeah.
a facility that is efficient.
I think
If they
they're
choose
so.
not to take advantage of that, then that's the choice that they make.
Yeah, I think people are so used to going to your conventional gas station where you're picking your, the side of the pump you're on, depending on where your fuel, tank is, that it's literally, they're not looking at the signs that say you can park on either side because the fuel pump, the line will extend, and they're just queuing to be wherever their tank is. And that's what you're referring to. That's just human nature for people who always gas up at other stations.
Right, and that's, again, argue efficiency, inefficiency, but the membership, the customer base that you have is creating that inefficiency, which is creating the problem, the circulation problem.
So I think we've talked this one quite a bit, and we're gonna, this is gonna rely to some extent. We'll see what AKRF has to say or what their review is of the traffic report. And again, I think there's still things to do as far as seeker and consistency.
Just to be clear, the notion of putting the tanks across the circulation drive, I think we've explained why it's really not a feasible alternative, and looking at that further.
I'm going to be looking at it further. But as I said, the one thing that I've heard this evening of why it's not feasible is the O&R easement more than anything else.
Sorry. The aisle, putting the tanks in the aisles going up to PJ's, across the circulation.
Across the street.
Yes, across the circulation.
Sorry, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. That's understood.
Okay.
Okay. We thank you for the information. Actually, I do want to ask one more thing. So right now there's a well, right? There's a pump house and a well at that site. Who does it belong to? And you probably said this already, but who does it belong to and who's removing it?
It belongs to the FBG entity that owns parcel 30, and that's the entity, or RD Management, will be removing it.
RD Management is removing it.
Moving the well house, they're capping the well, decommissioning it first. It'll be capped in accordance with, or decommissioned in accordance with DC protocols by a DC driller.
But did you say the well is actually owned by someone else?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, the well is in a parcel, and the parcel is owned by an
It's
RD
RD
entity.
Management's well.
Yes.
And it was intended for the development, but they ended up not using it?
Correct.
And it has salt contamination?
It can't be used as a practical matter now at all.
Okay. Okay.
So we're working
That's
with
going to be part
in the
of
village.
whatever seeker analysis we do.
Well, it's basically being decommissioned and will not be in service anymore.
Right.
Groundwater impacts are being evaluated of the gas station primarily. So
Okay.
we'll take care of it that way.
Okay.
Mayor did submit a letter, or George, submitted a letter from the mayor stating that the Department of Health wants that well disconnected. So.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
We'll obey.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Here's your I will take it otherwise. Do we have a meeting next month? I mean, next week? What do we have next week?
Projects, we didn't.
So we don't have a meeting next week? That's what because I know we didn't have another agenda.
No, we had 4 projects, we did them all tonight.
All right, so then we should do the minutes.
Oh, you scared
I was
me.
gonna put off the minutes till next meeting, but there is no next meeting.
We have one
They're
question.
all-
Oh,
they're
sure.
up on-
Sure.
We'd asked for the possibility of a technical review meeting. I'm not sure it's necessary to have a full technical review meeting, but we can, between now and then, work on some plans and information we can demonstrate.
So the only reason that we want to hold a place, just a potential for a Zoom meeting is when the traffic report comes out from the town's consultant and our traffic engineer, when they are synced up in terms of review, before we get here to the March meeting, if this issue can be further discussed so that way we're not tolling another month. Because I believe BJ's has a certain timeline to get their store operated and there's a lease issue. So not that we want to fast track anything or bypass or short circuit anything, but if we can do that, then we'd save a month.
Well, let's see when ACARF responds and provides a memo, and then we'll talk about it, whether it falls within a time we can have a tech meeting.
Right.
So as soon as we get something from them.
Yeah, even in an informal fashion, so that way if there are concerns, then we can come prepped, if you're seeking more documents. We heard today what you were looking for, so we'll do that. But
Okay.
anything else that comes out that saves us a month because we be prepared for the March meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right. Anything
Minutes are available out on draft already. I just changed them to any changes and
with all the
removed draft.
revisions, right?
So they're already up on the board.
And then the new one, though, was from December or January?
January, we have a problem with the videos. All 3 of mine, there's an issue.
With
So
January?
Yeah, so I've been working on them, but they're not as easy to do in the way that we're doing them. But yeah, December you should have had before the last meeting.
Okay.
in January.
Yeah, I wanted to still
So I
change the
resent-
formatting, but we'll just do December anyway.
Yeah,
Until we get a
so,
format.
Verbatim, most
Have
of
a good
them.
night.
Good night. So anyway, yeah, these are all already up on the board. They're released so that anybody can go on and say, oh, I need July 30th or whatever.
So, but we didn't approve them, did we?
They're not approved.
Okay.
They're up as draft.
Right, but
They
we
can remain
went
up
over
as
them.
Draft. Yeah,
Okay.
you've gone over all these.
All right, let's-
I made your red line changes.
Let's go through them and see who we have
July
here and if we could
20th,
do
we
it.
don't have a quorum for. We never will, so that has to remain up in draft.
Okay. Let me go to where's my agendas? Sean, unless you have something to say, you can leave for the evening.
Thank you. I have to get my laptop back.
Yes, and
Don't you wanna
and
stay?
Ashley, is there anything you want to let us know, or you're good to
We're
go?
in triple time now.
All good here. Have a good night, everyone.
All right, have a good night. Thank you.
Oh, really?
I'm glad I'm done. Tonight's.
October 14th. Yeah. They're out on the public already, just.
7:20 we can't do, right?
No, they have to remain in draft. We don't have enough staff.
Okay, 10:24
How about 10:14?
or 10:4. Didn't that say 10:24?
You said 24, but no, I could have typed it that way on the
It
email
says
earlier.
10:24 on the
Oh, well,
minutes.
it's 10:14.
Okay, so 10:14. I think I looked at these myself.
Yeah, you did your red lines already.
Okay, so,
This is revised, the email today is revised with the red lines.
all right, so we have sufficient people to approve this. I'll make a motion that we approve the October 14th, 2021 Planning Board Workshop Meeting Minutes. May I have a second?
10:19, it's not
But
10:14.
there's 2 of them. There's
Yeah, there's
10:19
two.
will be right after that.
I thought there was 10:19 and 10:24. Sorry,
No, 14, 19, and December 9th.
okay.
It could be, though, that the dates on the application, like the file names, I think are incorrect. but the date on the minutes are correct. So, may I have a second?
Pain pills.
A second.
Lisa?
Jason cannot
Oh, you
second
did a second?
it.
John did a second. John. Pat did a second.
John.
Right.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Jason Sorinsky,
Abstaining.
Jeff Manson,
Aye.
Bonnie Franson.
Aye.
Pat Shea,
Aye.
Lisa McQuaid.
Aye.
All right, so that's that. And we,
October 19th.
October.
That was
9th.
another red line I did for you
Okay,
after
so
you.
October 19th, there we go. That was another red line. Let me just make sure this was DG management. RQRF. Okay. There's a lot of DG management. Meadow Hill, I remember this one. Okay. And Pilati Village. All right. So would someone make a motion to accept the Tuesday, October 19th Planning Board regular meeting minutes?
I will.
Jeff, may I have a second?
I'll second.
Jason?
Sorinsky,
Aye.
Jeff Manson,
Aye.
Bonnie Franson,
Aye.
Pat Shea,
Aye.
Lisa McQuaid.
Aye.
Okay. And
December 9th.
December 9th?
I didn't do a red line. You never sent a red line. I don't know whether you have one.
Now, I wanted to still try and change the formatting, because this is when we talked about changing formatting, so I didn't. Can we abstain on these until next meeting?
Sure.
Is that okay with you all? Unless you really,
fine.
yeah, okay. All right, so that's it. So we can't do the July,
No.
okay. Okay. So with that, I will make a motion to adjourn this meeting. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays, any abstentions, motion carries. Meeting is
Is there a longest